I wonder if they can hear us. Probably. Don't say anything crazy. Stop the slurs right now.
Yeah, they definitely can when you got the countdown going.
Oh boy.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that, Gen Z.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Ordered Liberty Podcast, episode number 2. And yeah, we are excited to be here. It's going to be just us for sure tonight, but we might have Lactoid joining us in a little bit. Unfortunately, we have DebateCon this weekend. And so one of our guests is at that. Another guest was called off by the wife, which the wife does take final call on these matters. Mine is right over there right now. She hates it when I call her out, though. But yeah, we are excited to be here. We have a great show planned today, talking about, of course, our Federalist number 2, which will then take us nicely into this debate that Ryan and I just did this past Monday on the Raging Tomato about the American moral proposition and what it is, and I guess, as you'll see through the debate, whether or not it actually even exists, because our friends on the left seem to think it doesn't really exist, or at least it exists in their own special way. So I think we united, we called on the power of friendship, and I think we got across what we were trying to say. But with that aside, Ryan, how you been?
I'm good. I'm good. Got a little sick after the debate. I think that's what happens when you stay up super late and then the weather changes and you wander about the city, in the subway and all that. So that I brought that upon myself. But yeah, I think the debate was fascinating, and I'd love to pick your brain about your strategy and how you think it went. Because it's funny. I think we're in a weird situation where I think we won handily. I think Pisco thinks he won handily, and I'm not sure either of us is wrong. I think that we had very different goals going to this debate, and I think that we probably both achieved those goals. So I think that's going to be fascinating to talk about.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, man, yeah, good, busy, trying very hard. I know that with all the support from people in chat, thank you so much. We are so close to getting my channel monetized. It's at 366 of 500 subs. I know the first 500 are by far the hardest. So I really appreciate all of you spreading the word and subbing. It means a great deal to me. And we're in that weird position where we've easily passed all the watch hours, like all the other metrics. It's just because you guys watch, you guys tune in. But in any event, it's fun to watch it grow, and I appreciate all of you.
That's good. I was going to ask about that, how the watch hours were looking, because on my end on YouTube, I got to the subs first, and then it was a struggle getting to the watch hours, just because I'd put out these videos they were shorter videos, and they'd get a decent number of views, but it's like, gosh, I can get 1,000 views on this, and then it would only translate to like 50 watch hours or something, and you need 3,000 to get monetized. It's like, bro, but that's good to hear that you've past that. And that's what's interesting too, kind of about these longer form content channels, is you can have a fraction of the views, but when your content is 10 times longer, you're actually translating into more watch time, and that's the most important metric, is the watch time. That's what YouTube actually looks at as far as if they're going to run ads, and how many ads can run, how many ads will any independent viewer see. So it's good, yeah, and I can vouch too. I think I met you at about 200 subs, and now you're pushing 400, which it's been awesome growth. But I wanted to ask you too. How did it go with the IRL meet with Tally?
Oh, that was awesome. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. She's a tiny little thing, just a tiny little thing. She posted some pictures on X, and I am literally a foot taller than her, which is hilarious. But yeah, we hung out, had some good food. It was good to see her. Didn't do it like a content thing. It was just kind of like a get to know you better thing. And I really appreciate as I get to know her better, her perspective on these issues, because I think that there's increasingly, this is a good week to talk about it, what we're pushing for, and the idea of kind of the reasonable right and the future of the party. There's an audience for that. And in a week like this, when the Trump administration's just fucking up left, right, and center, I think even the most ardent MAGA diehard would say this was a bad week, right? in those situations, that's where there's room to have a conversation about what the future of the party looks like. And I think that we're increasingly going to see these moments where, people who have a different perspective can voice their opinions. And, as we gain steam, that's the thing we're looking for.
Yeah, no, 100%. And two points, one substantive, one not so substantive. I'll do the not so substantive one first. So yeah, obviously I saw the picture between you two, and I was trying to figure out if it was just you were really tall or she was really short. It might have been a combination of the two. But out of curiosity, because we might actually have the tallest average height of any show on YouTube between you and I. So out of curiosity, what are you standing at these days?
I'm 6'2", which is a gentleman's lie because I'm sure if you're a tall guy, you know what I'm talking about here. Um, if I took my shoes off and measured myself honestly, like, hand to God,
Right.
it'd probably be more like 6'1". But if I say I'm 6'1", then I'm like 4 inches taller than everyone else who says they're 6 foot. So you
Right.
kind of gotta modulate the way you talk about it to make sure everybody feels comfortable. So
Okay.
with shoes, I'll say 6'2".
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes exact sense. Like the guys who say they're 6 foot, they're really like 5'10", 5'11". The ones who say they're 5'10", 5'11", yeah, they're probably being honest about it because they want to get
Mhm.
as close as they can. But I measure it with shoes on. So my background is basketball, and it's
Mhm.
like that's how you measure your height and your time on the court. You're wearing your shoes, and
Mhm.
so why not measure it with shoes? But yeah, I'm actually standing at a cool 6'6", which
Ooh, look at that.
I came down from my playing days. I identified, it was my truth. I was living my truth as 6'7", and even before it became a meme, I just decided to bring it back down to 6'6", just as I think that's a yeah. But I go through these like handshake lines after a game. These guys on the other team listed at like 6'8", 6'9", and they're like barely taller than me.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like,
for sure.
yeah,
We should get I got a real life, I don't know if he'd want to do the show, but I got a real life buddy who's a tax attorney and he's 6'5". So if we, with our powers combined, we could have a basketball
oh,
team, you know.
absolutely. Hey, I am down anytime. But yeah. So well, cool. Well, everyone, I ever see everyone getting in here. Thank you all for being here. Let's
Oh,
yeah,
funny story just before we get off like the height and random
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
If you watch the 4 debates I did with Destiny, at some point in 3 of them, he yells at me. Like he just spurgs out and starts yelling, right? And the reason he does that, and we'll talk about this with Pisco later, it's maybe something I need to think about adopting. It creates clips, right? Like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
they're doing it because it creates a really good clip later. And
Yeah.
Pisco did that to you at one point, and we should talk about that later.
Yeah.
It's a weird tactic because it would never fly in the courtroom, but it's like an online debate tactic,
Yeah.
right? In only one of the debates did Destiny not do that to me. And the one he didn't is the one we were sitting in the same room physically. Because Destiny's like 5'7", and I'm,
Mhm.
and I'm 6'2". Like I'm literally 2.5 of him. And I'm not saying anything about it other than I just don't think like when you're sitting in the same room with somebody, you yell like that. It would be very weird,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you know what's so funny? I just saw the clip he posted, because I don't know how much you followed his lawsuit at all,
Mhm.
but it seems like this girl, this Lauren De Laguna, has like really been one of the people behind the scenes pulling the strings and pushing Dixie to do it. And Lauren, she's a lawyer, and I guess Destiny was in Austin for something, and like she saw him and went and started filming him because she accused him of stalking her, but it completely came off like she was stalking him. And but it's one of those things where it's like, you get face to face with someone, even like these two vehemently hate each other. Like, you look at the tweets between them, it's horrifying. It's well, not horrifying, but it's like toxic venom that they spew. But then they're even when they're up in front of each other in person, like being very antagonistic, it was just kind of like it was almost kind of like a meme, like, oh my gosh, you're stalking me, and like, no, you're stalking me. And so yeah, the face to face is so, I mean, maybe that gets into why our discourse is so bad these days. It's just,
Oh, people are their worst selves online. Like
yeah,
they're absolutely the worst selves online. And unfortunately, that does translate even to internet debate and discourse unless you're really careful, right? Like I think you you have to try very hard to enter every conversation and try to be gracious and extend some grace because it's going to descend into madness pretty fucking fast most of the time.
yeah,
But even if that's going to happen, you don't need to be the one who brought it there. You know what I mean?
yeah. But
Um,
but even to your point though, it's like even if you have a conversation where it is 90. 9% this cordial, civil. All you need is your one, spurg out clip moment, and boom, and that's going to be the only thing people take away from it. So yeah, I think I know exactly what moment you're talking about too, because I think he put it in his intro, which I just saw for the first time like 10 minutes ago, pulling up Pisco's video.
Mhm.
So I'm sure we'll get into that. But before that, why don't we talk about it's week 2 of Ordered Liberty. So why don't we talk about Federalist paper number 2?
Yeah, let's do it. So, Federalist Paper number 2 is actually a really interesting one to talk about this week because Federalist Paper number 2 is the Federalist paper that, if I was arguing with somebody who was opposed to the American moral proposition, and they were coming at it not from a left wing proposition, but they were coming from a right wing perspective, this is the one that would get cited at me the most if you're talking to like a ethno nationalist type.
Yeah.
But it also talks about natural law quite a bit. So I think I don't think they're reading it correctly, but it does get brought up a lot, and it's one you need to know if you want to argue that America is a propositional nation. So what is this one? This is John Jay, and he's talking to the people of New York, and he's making the argument that New York should ratify the Constitution and that there should be a federal government. And as he's talking about it, he makes a few central arguments. The first one is a centralized government is just necessary. You need a centralized government. You need it to respond to emergencies. You need to respond to foreign nations. You don't want England and France to divide us. You need to be able to talk about trade. There's things that you need a centralized government for. And he recognizes that a centralized government will infringe upon natural rights to a certain extent, but that it's a necessary evil, essentially, which is if you're talking like my conversation with like Fabian Liberty Scott, he's going to disagree with that aspect, but that's kind of his rebut to the ANCAP types who were at that point the anti-federalists. But then he goes on to talk about how America was gifted by Providence to be this amazing place with this connected land that united to defeat England, but also says that they were one people with one religion and one common ancestry, which is the part the ethno-nationalists really like, because he does talk about like classic nationalistic interests in this piece. So I think it both touches to our central theme, but also is cited by people who would disagree with our theme, which makes it a really interesting paper to talk about tonight.
Yeah, and to bounce out or build off that, people got to remember just the whole historical context of the Federalist Papers and why they were even happening, because it should be common knowledge, but unfortunately, it's not. The Constitution was not our first crack at building a government after successfully gaining independence from Britain. The first crack at it was the Articles of Confederation, and those turned out to be, I don't know if I want to call it a unmitigated disaster, but certainly they were not as successful as the hope was, in large part because it was too decentralized, and it wasn't so much a United States as much as it was just kind of 13 states that sometimes kind of work together, but really not that much. It was really more 13 independent sovereignties with just a far too weak centralizing force. And so that's the whole point. The Constitution and the Constitutional Convention came around was this idea that we got to have something that is more unifying, more centralized as far as there are interests that all 13 states share that are best tackled through one centralized body, whether that's the military, whether that's foreign relations with foreign sovereignties. And so that's the whole circumstance we find ourselves in. And the Federalist Papers are arguing for why we should have a more centralized structure, which is in this case the constitutional structure. The so yeah, that's the history piece we're talking about. I find your point about the ethno nationalists really interesting too, because I think this is when I started developing, I think, a deeper, more complex political philosophy, was when I thought, like, okay, these guys identify themselves as being on the right, which is where I identified myself. But why do I feel such a strong disagreement with the ideas that they're espousing? And best I could come down with was yeah, right, exactly to our whole point of our discussion tonight, which is America as a propositional nation. It's a nation that is not built on an ethnicity. It's not built on a religion or nationality. It's a nation built on ideas and ideas of freedom, of liberty. That it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you look like. If you buy in to these shared ideas, these shared core principles of the country, that we're going to welcome you in gladly, and we're going to build this experiment together. And that's what the ethno-nationalists get wrong when they focus in on the race component of it and say, well, America was built by white people for white people. It's like, I'm sorry, I would trade every ultra woke, insufferable white lefty for a hardworking black or brown Nigerian, Indian immigrant that believes in the American proposition and believes in the American dream and is willing to come here, assimilate, work hard, learn the language, all these types of things. I will make that trade one for one any day of the week. And that's the question I would love. I've never actually talked to one of these ethno nationalists. I would love to ask them that question just to see if they would actually commit to the race is the most important part and wanting it. Yeah, you really want to have a one of these woke whiteys or white wokies watching over your kids, even though they despise who you are as a person, or someone who is not white but agrees with the principles of the country. And I'd be so curious to get what that answer would be.
Yeah, I think that what they'd say is that these ideas are cultural and that race is a proxy for culture. But I think that gives the game away, right? Because in what you said, I would trade a woke leftist, which means that whatever their dissent is, they have abandoned the moral proposition by definition, right?
Yeah.
So whatever their cultural heritage is, they've abandoned it. So I don't really, there's nothing there to speak of for somebody who's embraced the American moral proposition, regardless of background. And that's where the real play in the joints is, right? Because there's a lot packed into that idea. One is you can abandon the proposition, at which point our common heritage won't mean much because we no longer actually have the same cultural beliefs, regardless of what our background might be. And two is honestly the need for assimilation. And I talk about assimilation as opposed to kind of the modern idea of multiculturalism, where in a society that has assimilation, the goal is that people come in and they assimilate to the American moral proposition, but they still bring with them their cultural identity, their food, their language, their heritage, their music, their art, which all makes us better off. But the core American identity is what you need to assimilate to. Whereas in multiculturalism, the idea is that people come here and never assimilate. Mm-hmm. You know, like all cultures are equal yeah. And, you know, they should just keep their culture. But that runs totally contrary to our founding principles. Like, and this is something that came up in the debate. Like, if you take seriously the idea that we're questing after natural law, then it stands to reason that cultures that get closer to natural law are better than those that don't. Right? Like if there's an objective standard, you could be better or worse. And that's just something that I think is inherent in the concept, though very unpopular in lefty circles. If you'll indulge me, there's this crazy story Sam Harris told that I think illustrates the issue. He was at an ethics conference. I'm going to paraphrase him, so I'll do the best I can. And I can't do his voice, but and he gave an ethics talk. And there was a woman who was she was a PhD, and she was the head of bioethics in the Obama administration at one point. So she's really steeped in ethics, and she has this deep, deep, rich understanding of ethics in her field. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, she came up to Sam Harris because he was talking about how multiculturalism is wrong in his speech. And she said, like, how could you possibly say that? Like, it's all subjective. All cultures are equal. And Sam said to her, like, well, imagine that there was a culture that just believed they had, in their religion, there was a saying that the third shall be blind. So for every third child, they just cut their eyes out to appease their God. Would you be comfortable saying that culture is worse than ours, at least in the way they treat children? She was like, no, you could never say that. It's all culturally relative. And it's like, okay, that's the end game of cultural relativism and abandoning natural law. Like, you can't even with a straight face say that disfiguring children is wrong. And because how could you once you think it's all relative? That's kind of where we end up today on the modern left. But that said, pivoting back to the Federalist paper, the line, because some people in chat were asking, from Federalist 2, that if I'm debating like a well-read ethno-nationalist, there are not very many of them, I'm going to say, but on the rare occasion when I do, they quote this line at me from John Jay. Providence has been pleased to give this one connected country to one united people, A people descended from the same ancestors, speaking the same language, professing the same religion, attached to the same principles of government, very similar in their manners and customs, and who by their joint counsels, arms, and efforts, fighting side by side through a long and bloody war, have nobly established general liberty and independence. So John Jay was clearly appealing to common ancestry, common religion, common culture when making the argument for a federal government in this section, which is why people cite that. Which is why this is a common site for the ethno-nationalist types.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think the point you just made about the bioethics and the cultural relativism, that was also borne out in the debate when I asked the question. To not to spoil too much, but basically Pisco's stance was his definition of the American moral proposition is that anything which upholds the Constitution and the rule of law, which then begs the question, well, what are the parameters of that if someone were to vote through the constitutional and legal system and reinstitute slavery, but they did it with a constitutional amendment. Does that make it moral? And their answer was yes, it would. And that's why my example I pushed them on. Like I think yes, the blinding of the every third child, that's a stark to illustrate the principle. But heck, we saw it in real life with the Nazis in World War II and how they conducted their campaign and they did what they did to the Jews, and then they lose, and now we have the Nuremberg trials. But the question is, what moral authority do you have to prosecute the Nazis when you look at how they actually took over and did what they did? They did it through legalistic means. They took over the country according to their rules and customs and laws, and then perpetrated these horrific atrocities. And so, if that's what they did in accordance with their own laws, if the end of all of this is just upholding the rule of law or the laws as the humans define them, then you really have no leg to stand on to condemn that. But if you actually believe in a natural law and objective morality, which is what they did, which is how they were able to conduct Nuremberg, even if they won't outright say it, that's just a required belief to have to even conduct those trials, is that you have to be enforcing the natural law, the higher law that the Nazis violated. And I pushed them on that a couple times to see what is their answer to that, what's the moral authority under their system, and they never gave. To my knowledge, memory, they never gave an answer to that question.
And this is my my grand political theory, for whatever it's worth. I don't know if I've articulated this before, but here's how I look at it, and this is why I think leftists fuck up, and where I think the extreme right fucks up. When you look at a government, you're always it's like a tower, right? You need to have blocks that build on each other, and the widest base block is always going to be nationalism. Like, you have to believe that you are a nation. You have to believe you are a united people. You have to act for common defense. If you don't do these things, you don't get to be a nation, because other nations just fucking conquer you. Yeah. And that's what John Jay was saying to New York. He was saying, like, look, if we don't unite, if we're not a united force with all the other colonies that can fight back against England and France, they're going to pick us off one at a time. And the Articles of Confederation did not allow for a executive who could act in an emergency, which is one of the main points of having a unified central government. So that key point, I think, is irrefutable. And that's why, for example, in emergencies, the government can do things that really do violate natural rights. Like, if you get drafted, that is a extreme violation of natural right to liberty on some level. But if you don't have a nation to protect your rights, what good are they, right? So there's a hierarchy there. Yeah. A lot of countries stop there. A lot of countries just rest on nationalism. But we added a second tier. We added this belief in natural rights, this pursuit of the good and of individual liberties, and to treat people as individuals. And this is a huge advancement in theory of government, right? And my meta critique of the fringe left and the fringe right is the fringe left wants to add a third block called equity. Mm-hmm. I'm not actually opposed to it, but they don't like equity. Just means, okay, so let's have individual rights, but let's try to make society better. I'm actually fine with that, but that's not good enough for them. They want to have the third block cannibalize everything that came under it. It cannibalizes nationalism. It cannibalizes the pursuit of natural rights. And that's where they fuck up. And that's why it becomes dangerous, because they eat the foundation. The fringe right wants to do the same thing. But for a different reason. They don't want to add a third block. They just want to eliminate the individual rights block and go back to pure nationalism, right? So both of these movements seek to erode the foundation of American society for different reasons, but that's the horseshoe. That's why you so often, when you're talking to someone online, you have to be like, oh shit, you seem really anti-America. Are you a fringe leftist or a fringe rightist? I can't really tell, right? Because their goal is fundamentally the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but man, this whole Trump withdrawing his endorsement of Marjorie Taylor Greene and her response basically saying that Trump has sold out MAGA and she is the real MAGA, and I guess trying to take up the mantle and carry it forward, carry the movement that Trump built forward in her own name now by declaring Trump is fake MAGA, I am real MAGA. But then, right, exactly like you're saying there, it's just the horseshoe theory starts to rear its ugly head of, well, actually when you are supposed to be real MAGA now, but you're out there on The View finding yourself in agreement with the lovely ladies of The View or Jasmine Crockett, and now all of a sudden, yeah, you guys are on the same political project. Is it really everyone else that's just lost their minds and has given up on true MAGA, or is it just you that has gone out far afield, entered the horseshoe, and now you find yourself aligning with some of these people that just are the last people we would expect? But
yeah, well, it's going to be interesting, and this is not really our subject today, but I think the Epstein stuff is here to stay, and I say that for a few reasons. One, of all the issues out there, this isn't one that Trump's core constituency is likely to let go.
yeah,
Like, I mean, if you think about what united them in the first place, there was like the QAnon, there was the Pizzagate, right? Like the idea that there is a some group of evil pedophiles that run the government is like kind of core to that particular ideology.
yeah,
And Epstein was an evil pedophile who ran the government, right? So like it's hard to let that one go.
yeah.
And it's also going to be really hard to let go. And I think you know this as a prosecutor, but for those of you who aren't lawyers, when people say the Epstein files, there's no such thing. What there is a huge collection of documents, emails, phone records, notes, Rolodexes, photos, everything the government ever collected. It's huge. And quite frankly, and this is just my 2 cents, if a criminal case was there, if they could have gotten a conviction against Trump or anybody else, they would have done it by now. Biden would have done. They've had this for years. Biden would have done it. Trump would have done it. The reason they haven't released it is, I think, Occam's razor, the most obvious point. It has everyone's name in there, because if you know anything about Jeffrey Epstein, this dude was a professional networker. His business was to know people and to network them together, not all of which had to do with his sexual predilections. A lot of it was just networking for networking's sake. So like today, we saw Hakeem Jeffries' name come out of the Epstein files. We're going to see Trump's name come out of the Epstein files. You're going to see everybody's names come out of the Epstein files, because the dude knew everyone. He knew everyone. We saw this week evidence of him texting a Democratic senator or congressperson. I don't know if she was a senator. Sorry, I can't remember. When they were cross-examining Michael Cohen in front of Congress, because he had her number and she would listen to him, right? Like, he knew everyone. So the thing about releasing this is it's going to dirty up everyone, every politician, every major figure you can think of is going to get dirtied up, but there's not going to be conclusive evidence that anyone did anything wrong. Mm-hmm. Because if there was, they would have brought a case. That's my 2 cents, at least.
Plus too, my understanding is that a lot of it has been placed under court seal. And so it's not like they're just sitting on it and refusing to release it. It's like, no, the courts have placed a lot of this information under seal, primarily for protection of the victims that have been involved. And so it's not just Trump can just, press his magic red button and it all gets released. It's like, no, you'd actually have to petition the court, whichever court has these things under seal, and the court would have to order it be released. But I believe similar petitions have already been denied in the past. So, I mean, I think at this point, gosh, it feels like the best thing to do is just release everything you can release, at least to get the optical win of like, look, It's going to be bad. There's going to be a lot of names named, but we need to be a little mature about this. Kind of like the point you just said, I think very eloquently. This guy, yeah, had his personal sexual issues that were really bad, but he also was just a political networker, and he flexed political power by getting to know these people and getting on personal levels. And so there's a lot of people that are going to get named. It just is what it is. The sooner we can get it out in the open, the sooner I think we can finally start to move on from it. But I don't know if we're even
Well,
going to do that.
I think you're right. I mean, here's the thing: neither you nor I know what's in them,
Yeah.
right? And I think this is why you're right, assuming that there's nothing that's like a true smoking gun in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to assume that for the sake of argument. Then you're right, because look, if you don't release them, they're going to your political opponents are going to keep releasing them in drips and drabs so it stays in the news, and this is going to be the only news story for months, right? And it's going to go to the Senate, and maybe it passes the Senate, and then you have to veto, right? Like, I mean, like, there's no, this is going to look terrible. So if your name's not in there, or if it's, sorry, we know his name's in there. If there's no smoking gun in there, you release everything and you take your lumps and then you let it end. And the problem is, and this is what Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying, not doing that implies there is something in there.
Yeah.
Because, why would you want it to come out in this slow drip, right? Because, like, imagine that, like, the shutdown ended and the Democrats leaked some Epstein emails, and that's been the whole news story since then. So, like, you'd think the right would be taking their victory lap on the shutdown, but we're doing Epstein instead. And that's going to keep happening. Every single time that there's some good news on the right, you're going to get an Epstein email. And that's going to continue. Even like the ones the Dem released, I don't know if you guys saw this, but it said basically they redacted the victim name. And once I was like, holy shit, that's a damning email. Yeah. But then you look into it and you're like, oh, we actually know who that woman is. And she testified that Trump never did anything inappropriate with her. So we have testimony contradicting the fact this email from Epstein. So that's not really a smoking gun. It's not saying anything we didn't already know, but the timing of it and releasing it exactly when they did was so politically damaging that it's kind of crazy to just leave that out there so that it can just keep being endless news cycles.
Yeah. And I think I'm glad to hear you and I had the same reaction to that initial leak, because I even said it in the Discord, like, y'all, I think Trump might be cooked, because that
was a bad one.
That was horrible. But then my official tweet I said on it was, this looks really bad, but I'm curious to hear what the response is going to be. And then the response was, oh, wait, we know who this is. It's Virginia Giuffre. And yeah, she's testified under oath multiple times that Trump has not done anything with her. And so it's like, oh, okay, so there's the explanation. There's a response. No longer think he's cooked. But as far as, like, because that was my feeling initially, was like, well, gosh, at the very best, he either knows way more than he ever told us he knows, and at the very worst, he's actually implicated in the ring. And but it sounds like neither and credit to the Republicans, kind of like what we were just talking about here. Democrats, they released their 3 emails as like, boom, look at these. And Republicans said, oh, we're not playing that game. Here's 20,000 emails for everyone to go through. And the emails do show that there was a falling out, and these two were not on good terms. And in fact, I think Epstein said Trump's like the most venomous person alive, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, these two were definitely not the buddies that our friends on the left would like us to believe. But
did I tell you I saw him shortly before he died?
Who, Epstein?
Yeah.
No.
I was I think I can tell this story. I don't think, yeah, I think this is okay. I was clerking in the Southern District of New York, and the prison facility that's attached to the courthouse is where he was being held. Mm-hmm. So we, the clerks took a tour of the prison facility, and he was in there at the time. Huh. And it was the craziest thing, because he, for those of you who don't know, when you go to a prison facility, they have these rooms where you can meet with your lawyer because you have a constitutional right to talk to your counsel. Not 2 minutes before. It was like, that was
a good one.
Funny. It was like, it was I think August, so maybe like 6 weeks before, something like that. But anyway, there's these rooms where you can talk to your lawyer, and they had 4 rooms. 2 you could reserve, and 2 that were just open, first come, first serve. And the trick with the first come, first serve rooms is you can't kick anybody out because they have a constitutional right to see their lawyer. So it's kind of like you just wait. The lawyers just come and wait until the room opens up. So, I mean, take whatever you want from this, but Epstein hated being in jail so much that his lawyers would show up at like 4 a.m. to be first in line. And they'd get into the first come, first serve room, like 8 of them. And they just stay there all day until the room closed. So he never had to go do any prison stuff. He was just in with his lawyers all day, every day, which is, if you do the math, he's probably spending $35,000, $40,000 on legal fees to do that per day, because it's like 8 lawyers, many of them senior partners from major law firms. But B, the reason that the guards were talking about is they were fucking pissed because all the other inmates were getting mad because they couldn't use the room because he was monopolizing it. So that's my weird interaction with Epstein's story.
No, that's pretty funny. Yeah, that's who would have thunk it? But yeah, at least too, it was in the context of him already being in jail. Gosh, that would have been awkward if you're at like a cocktail reception or something, and he's like, "Hey, nice to meet you. Let's get a picture," and now all of a sudden you're on the hook forever.
We should exchange emails.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh man, but okay. Well, yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into this debate because there's a lot to talk about for sure. For anyone, I know some of our lovely viewers here did catch it. It ended up being over 4.5 hours. Well, gosh, yeah, I think we both hopped off at like 1:30 in the morning Eastern, which was rough. Yeah, on a Monday night with the Tuesday morning coming bright and early. So that was awesome. But
and I can't sleep after either. Like I get kind of an adrenaline dump from doing like a debate like that, especially like a contentious one. So it takes me a little while to wind down,
Yeah. So the background on this is Sarah the Raging Tomatoes channel. My understanding, you can give some more info. Did you reach out to her and propose this topic, or what was the lead up on that?
So I got put in touch with her by Admiral Gibbs, who's an awesome guy. Shout out Gibbs. And he's the guy who hosted the debate between me and Pisco on presidential immunity.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically just asked for a bunch of propositions. And then she said she'd find people to argue the other side. So I gave her 4 propositions. And this is the one that people were interested in. Weirdly, I think it was Non-Fawn who said yes first. And then she locked in the prompt, and then she added Pisco, which is really interesting. Just like for those of you who debate, if I'm going to be debating Non-Fawn on an issue of philosophy, that's a really different thing than debating Pisco. And my tactics and my prep would be very different, because Non-Fawn, in a conversation with Non-Fawn, I'm going to get to talk for like 5 minutes, and then he's going to talk for 5 minutes, and we're going to kind of deep dive it. In a conversation with Pisco, you have to assume, and like I got no animosity against Pisco, but I've debated him a bunch of times. I know how this works. About 40 seconds into anything you say, he's going to yell, "What's your evidence for that?" Right? Like, so you kind of have to make your plan around a contentious debate rather than around a kind of more collaborative style debate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's interesting too. Did Sarah know that you and Pisco have a history, or did she just kind of get him just as like hey, he's I mean, I'm sure you're speaking for her, but if you know.
I definitely don't know. Now, I mean, the thing is, Pisco's by far the biggest channel that was of the 4 of us, right? Like Pisco's at like 25,000 subs or something like that. So like bringing him in is a big get. And like, look, I'm going to give Pisco credit where credit's due. If someone asked me like, who are the 2 best debaters on the left, I'd say Destiny and Pisco.
Yeah.
And I'd say it pretty quickly. So, I think that he's a good get for something like this. I also think, and this is, I don't want to like get too much into the meta, but a lot of like people like Wick, people like Sarah, like they've started, even like Josiah said this, if you're going to bring in a bunch of lawyers, you kind of need to have lawyers on both sides.
Yeah.
Because if all the lawyers are on one side, it can kind of turn into a little bit of an over preparation game, because lawyers come in and we got our opening, we got our talking points, we got this whole thing mapped out. Oh, yeah. And that can be a little bit, it's just, we do it for a living. It's a little too professional.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to see what happens when it is one-sided lawyers, go watch mine and Ryan's debate on Wick when the government shutdown first started. We went against two non-lawyers, and it was pretty brutal. They had to call in Soy Pill for reinforcements.
Shout out Alish, who's in the chat.
Yeah. So yeah, I know now, Alish. Of course, that is our takeaway from it. I'm sure if you disagree, it was great. Yeah, see, it was a lot of fun. It was great. But yeah, but to Ryan's point, it's like when you have the lawyers, it can get very particular, very in the weeds very quickly. And yeah, I can. So I'm definitely with you on that. So I'm wondering if Nonfon maybe recruited Pisco. I don't know if they have any relationship.
I don't know. It's almost like I think it was better content because Pisco was involved, but I almost would have preferred to do it with Nonfon having a bigger role because Nonfon is a utilitarian and actually has kind of a robust philosophy about why that's correct and why he believes it and has thought about how that compares to natural law. And actually, like he's kind of deeper in the weeds on the philosophy than Pisco is. So it wouldn't have been maybe as fireworky and fun, but for the viewers, but it would have been, I think we might have gotten a little further. But anyway, it would have been a very different debate. The other thing I also want to say, shout out to Sarah, the opening for that debate was fire. I'm totally going to steal that graphic, like the Black American flag. Oh my God, it looks so good.
Yeah, when we went into the gauntlet portion of it, which I didn't even know, like I knew there was going to be the open panel. I didn't realize there was going to be 10 people total. But even that intro graphic of like the knight taking on the hordes of enemies storming through the gates, I was like, it's like 12, it's like midnight and past midnight, and we're like getting fired up now. Yeah, it was an interesting experience. But yeah, also once again, thank you for having me as your champion in the trenches. I think we did do a good job, I guess, advocating for our project and because that is kind of one of our core principles of our project here is that America is a propositional nation and it's something worth defending and well, I guess for purposes of this debate, it's something even worth believing in, we spent almost the whole time arguing whether or not it even exists. But yeah, I think the first thing I wanted to do going into this, I wanted to play Pisco's opening, this opening little stinger, just to kind of, because this is his big like, oh yeah, watch me own these what do you say, mind numbing, these lawyers in a mind numbing debate. And I only watched this the one time, and yeah, I think it's gonna be a good place to start to see where was our weakest part. Admit, where was my weakest part?
Yeah, and can you put Daz up on screen because I want to. Daz has a really important comment. I want to explain my thought process because anyway, it's an interesting comment Daz has. So let's talk about that later. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to start with the stinger just to see. Chat, you can let me know. Did I get epically owned with facts and logic? Was I being mind melted here? Let's and yeah, the jackets. We did not plan the jackets or the matching.
Look, if you're a lawyer, you're always wearing blue or gray. So you got a 50-50 chance of matching. Unless you're like a baller partner and then you got the pinstripes. But
even right now, we're kind of half matching. I thought the quarter zip trend, although I was on the trend before it became a trend, but that's okay. It is getting a little chilly out. We got our sweaters on, but all right. Let's see. Does Gen Z attorney get epically owned? To take the 30,000 foot view, just back to the debate prompt, has the left abandoned the American moral proposition? 15-20 minutes of our friends on the left basically denying that there even is an American moral proposition, while we're just trying to say it's just
that's a fucking lie. Wait, you just lied. Do you agree you just lied? That is a false statement you just said, correct?
Explain it to me.
Wait, so you just said we don't believe that there's a American moral proposition, correct? Did you just say that? Did you just say that, yes or no? And don't you remember when I said what I thought the American moral proposition was, yes or no? Do you remember, yes or no, when I said what I thought the American moral proposition was?
Yeah, it's illegal.
Yes. So you just said I didn't have it. Wait a second. Let me finish. You just said I didn't believe in the American moral proposition, and you just also said that I did. So why don't you correct your statement?
I will happily amend it. You are completely disavowing the commonly held and understood among.
Prove that. Well, so the commonly held belief is this meta-ethical view. That's the commonly held belief. Prove that. What's the argument for that, dipshit? What's the argument for that? Hey, folks, please.
All right.
We don't need to have his face up while we talk about him, but the if I'll take that down. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think that there's we can get into this, but like this is Pisco's thing. And when you debate Pisco, this is just the tactic you need to be aware of, is that he listens. One of his great strengths as a debater, he listens very carefully to the exact words you're using. And then especially when he's on the negative, like he is here, doesn't have the affirmative position. His goal is just to nitpick, right? So he's gonna try to break down every sentence in a way that actually kind of prevents stringing two thoughts together. And that, I'm not knocking him for it, because if you have the negative position and you just kind of stonewall the entire debate, that's actually a good way of preventing somebody from stringing together the points they need to prove the affirmative. So I don't know. How did you take that point?
I don't know if I'm going to recover. That was pretty brutal. Facts and logic, epic owning. But no, I think when I saw that, I was like, wow, that was the thumbnail. That was wait, you just lied. It's like, if you actually listen to what I'm saying there, which I hate how the audio is coming across, because you can't even really hear half of what I'm saying. But my point is that for anyone who was listening to the debate up to that point, our position was that America is a propositional nation based on a moral proposition, and that moral framework for the country is laid out in the Declaration of Independence. It's the idea of God-given rights, that we all men are created equal and endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among those rights are the rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that the government is constituted to protect those rights. Like, that is a moral statement. That's not a legal statement. That is a statement about moral rights, where they come from, and the fact that they exist inherently within us and they're not given to us by the government. Now, the Constitution, that's the legal codification of that moral framework, but it's very important. But what we were arguing was that America is founded on the principles of the Declaration. Their response, their definition of the moral proposition, as I kind of mentioned earlier, was a purely legalistic, so long as it is consistent with the Constitution and the rule of law, then therefore that is the moral proposition. And so when I say we listen this whole time for them saying they don't even believe in the moral proposition, and Ryan, I heard you chime in during the clip. You said the correct moral proposition.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the best way of saying it. But yes, my point was exactly that. We spent almost the entire debate debating about whether or not the American moral proposition, those ideas in the Declaration, are true or not. But that was besides the point of, if we're talking about whether or not you guys have abandoned it, the fact that you're arguing whether or not it's even true is kind of indicative of whether or not you actually believe in it, if you don't think it's true, and therefore have abandoned it. But the big gotcha he got me there on was not even a gotcha, because what I said was true. Like, they have abandoned the moral proposition and explained exactly why it doesn't exist, because there is no such thing as natural rights or objective morality. And so that's kind of my takeaway from getting epically owned with facts and logic. I don't know what you think about that, though.
Yeah, I think, just zooming out a little bit about debate tactics, and here's why I think Pisco probably feels good about how the debate went, and I think we should also feel good about how the debate went, and I'll tell you why I think that's true. When you look at a debate like this one, there's kind of two ways you could take our position, right? You could say, all right, I'm going to try to construct the logical case. I'm going to start with my premises. I'm going to go to my conclusion. This is the American moral proposition. This is why it's correct. This is what the left did. That's why it proves abandonment. Therefore, we win, right? And you build the whole thing out. Now, here's the problem. This format does not allow for long form discussion. Like, in some formats, you get 5 minutes. The other side gets 5. It's timed. Yeah. In this one, you're interrupting each other all the time. And that gives a big advantage to the side that's trying to take the negative, because they can just keep interrupting you. And Pisco loves to do what you showed in the clip. So for me, strategically, that wasn't the way we were going to win this debate. The way we were going to win this debate, and the reason I thought we won this debate, is that the best possible argument, and this is something that Gibbs says, and I take it from him, the best possible argument against the leftist position is to let leftists talk. Right? So what we were going to do is explain, this is the moral proposition. This is why it's obvious. It's on the face of the Declaration of Independence. It's right there. It was used by Lincoln. It was used by MLK. It was used by every major civil rights figure. It was always good enough. It was literally described as the promise of America by MLK, right? So like this is, we lay that out and then get them to tell us how stupid it is, how stupid and wrong and bad it is, right? And then the audience can easily see, well, they clearly have abandoned it. They think it's stupid. Like the more they argue, objective morality is not true. God, I don't believe in God, which you don't actually have to get to natural rights, but we can talk about that's a more detailed point. But the more they argue against it, the more clearly they evidence their own abandonment. And Daz, I know you had this question, but to your point, that's why I wasn't trying to. There's another version of this debate where I structure my arguments differently. And the other version of this debate is I say, it doesn't matter whether you agree with it or whether it's true or whether God exists or any of that stuff. All that matters is our founders said this is self-evident. If you disagree, you are rejecting it. And just build from that. And that's the approach I would have taken in a debate where we had time limits and we could go back and forth with rebuttals. But in a debate like this, where I was anticipating that Pisco was going to be really, really aggressive, I thought the more effective technique would be to try to create a situation where he's going to go hard about how stupid it is. And I think that's what we got. So what I was hoping the audience would take away from it is it's like, well, holy shit, if I'm someone who believes in the Declaration of Independence, this Pisco guy has lost the fucking plot because he's saying it's idiotic. He's saying it doesn't mean anything. At one point, he said the American moral proposition is consistent with slavery, which means that whatever moral progress we've made is not because of the American moral proposition, but because of some other better moral proposition that he believes in, right? So of course he's rejected the American moral proposition. He thinks there's a better one. And that's the one that got rid of slavery, not the American moral proposition. So that's kind of what I was hoping to do, was kind of to let him hang himself with his own aggressiveness. But I think he probably feels good about the debate also because he got to be really aggressive. And that's what he wanted to do. So, I mean, I think to me, that's how that played out.
Yeah. And I think, going back to, so it just in that intro stinger clip, it was when I amended my statement to be that they have abandoned or they're not buying into the commonly held, mutually understood moral proposition. And then they both flipped out of like, oh, where's your proof for that? Where's your proof for that? Y'all just heard it from Ryan saying that all of these great debates over America as an aspirational propositional nation between Lincoln and MLK, between Frederick Douglass, they were all citing to the Declaration of Independence. And so when I say it's a commonly held understanding that the Declaration is the framework for the American moral proposition, and I even did it at one point in the debate. I'm like, I'm going to Google it. 6 words. What is the American moral proposition? Every article I could find. Y'all can do it right now. You can Google it right now. Those 6 words. Or frame it, question, ask it however you want. You will also see it is the Declaration. And so to have this big like freak out moment of like, oh, basically it's like, yeah, he accused us of using proprietary definitions for American moral proposition when he's the one over here he's the one that's got the unique proprietary definition that is just how he defines it. He even admitted at one point, it's like, I had to sit down and think about what is this and what does this really mean? It's like, so yeah, definitionally you're admitting that you approach this debate with a proprietary lens while we were approaching it with a historical, what does the record reveal? Which I just found that entertaining.
Well, I think it can't, like the reason that he can't be right ultimately is that if America's a propositional nation and everyone gets to invent their own proposition, then we're nothing at all. Right? Like there has to be an agreed upon proposition, which means it has to come from a founding document. It can't be just something we make up. Now, it's not going to be the Constitution because the Constitution is not a moral document. It's a legal document. But we have a moral document. That's the Declaration of Independence. So, and like you said, like everybody has cited this. And that's why one of my favorite moments in the debate. I don't know if it landed for the audience, but it landed for me, and I got a lot out of it. So maybe that's just me being selfish or masturbatory or whatever. But after Pisco did his whole "but what about slavery? What about slavery? What about slavery? What about slavery?" thing, which I was expecting, I had that quote from the Lincoln-Douglas debate, locked and loaded, right, where he's talking about like no one believed in this. And I'm like, actually, let's listen to what Lincoln said, where he said everybody thought black people were included in the Declaration. Every president, George Washington, no one said differently. Everybody thought so. Now, maybe they didn't live up to it, but everybody understood it. Everybody knew it. And that, in fact, is why Lincoln was saying that slavery was wrong, even though if you read the debates, Lincoln peppers in a bunch of real racist shit in those debates. He's not coming in there actually saying that there's actual equality between the races as a matter of fact, but he is saying that as a matter of moral dignity, as a matter of natural law, that they are included in the Declaration and that everyone always thought so. And that's the directionality point that I think really stumped Pisco. Like he wanted to talk about how the moral proposition has to be the same because it's objective. And in that sense, he's not wrong. But what people who don't believe in objective morality often get wrong is they think that just if the morals is objective, then the people must live up to it at all times. And that's just not true. You can have an objective moral and then fail to live up to it. In fact, if morality is objective, it stands to reason that most people will fail to live up to it most of the time. Mm-hmm. That's what it means. It's like an impossibly high standard that we're all struggling to reach and mostly failing. So it's not surprising that people failed in the past. The problem is if people revert and they start unlearning lessons and going back to their old bad ways. That's much worse than failing to rectify a problem in real time despite best efforts. So I think that I was very comfortable with how all that went and think that we navigated that well.
Yeah, and Jason brings up a good point too, that we got to this topic because Pisco kept making the point that these individual founding fathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, which he says he still views them as icons and heroes, which I do believe him when he says. I think he's sincere when he says that, which is good compared to our typical ilk of our friends on the left who are more comfortable tearing down a statue of Washington or Jefferson than saying, oh no, these were good men, even if they had individual failings. But that point aside, he kept going back to them as, well, how can you say that they haven't abandoned the American moral proposition if you're here saying that it resides in the Declaration, which says all men are created equal, yet the very man who wrote that didn't believe all men were created equal because he owned slaves. And he kept going back to that as like this checkmate point, which brings up what we were saying, what we've coined the directionality argument. And that's what led me to believe he really wasn't grasping what we were saying about directionality, because he kept going back to make that same point over and over again about how the founders, under our definition, the founders abandoned the American moral proposition. But our point is that there can be individual failings, but what matters is the direction you're taking the entire philosophy in. And yes, just because you have an individual failing of you are an owner of slavery, again, just take Thomas Jefferson as the example. He owned slaves, but he also wrote the words that served as the moral foundation for freeing all of the slaves. Mm-hmm. And so that's just, you just can't deny that. But Pisco's response was, well, Thomas Jefferson did nothing personally to help free the slaves or help end slavery. Did nothing personally. And so, classic lawyer move. I asked him, "Oh, are you sure about that? You want basically, it's called impeachment when you're in a trial. Mm-hmm. You get the witness to lock in their answer when you know you can debunk them or dunk on them." Got him to lock it in. Said Thomas Jefferson did nothing to help abolish slavery. So then I dropped a little history knowledge bomb of like, oh, what about when he banned the importation of slaves as president? What about when he urged Congress to pass that law and then he signed the law himself? Did that help stop slavery? And Pisco actually said, no, it did not. It did nothing to stop slavery because it didn't actually stop the practice of slavery. It was like, okay.
Well, yeah, I think that there's a lot there. There's a lot there. He was really locked in to this slavery argument, which I don't think worked on any level, just because it if you talk about natural law about a lot, you're going to hear the slavery argument more than any other argument. So this is well-trod territory. Let's just put it that way. Like it's not like I invented the directionality argument on the spot. This is something I've said a lot of times before. But beyond that, and one of my few regrets about how that debate went is I should have included in my opening. I had it, and then I kind of just forgot to say it. So it was kind of just a fuck up. Predicting that they would have a hollowed out legalistic take on what American morality is, which is of course exactly what they had.
Real quick, sorry to cut you off, but funny you mentioned your opening statement and where you made a few predictions, because of the 4.5 hour debate, I actually had that exact moment pulled up because I wanted to get you to go through it and let us know if there's anything you wish you included. So let's listen to Ryan's bold predictions for how he thought our friends on the left would handle the debate and whether or not they actually did do exactly as predicted.
Of late. Because this is such a clear point, I suspect my opponents will struggle. And I say opponents, these are friends. So, my friends on the other side, I should say. But I think they're going to struggle to discredit that proposition. So instead, I suspect most of our conversation is going to be about fighting over definitions, irrelevant whataboutisms about Trump or MAGA, because truthfully, nothing you can say about the right has any bearing on the proposition we're debating tonight, which is purely about the left. Or, the always classic maneuver, moving the goalposts and saying, yes, it's happening, but in fact, it is a good thing. So I think with that, I'll leave it to my colleagues. And I think we'll work through this argument quickly and easily tonight because it's so obviously true.
Boom.
First of all, Pisco hates it so much when I do like the condescending big bro lawyer thing. It makes him so angry, which is always fun for me. That's always fun for me to do. But anyway, all those things happen instantly, right? And of course they were going to happen instantly, because if you're going to counter argue, you're going to say, no, that's not the American moral proposition, and get into that fight. But that's a great fight for us. Like, as we talked about earlier, if they're saying the Declaration of Independence is suddenly not the American moral proposition, despite every single civil rights leader and major historical figure in United States history saying it was America's moral proposition, that's delightful. Then there was the Pisco-ism that I think we were both aware of, that like Pisco's going to come in and he's just going to talk about Trump the whole time, which I think, despite having to like roll around in the mud for 10 minutes at the beginning, we completely defend. Like, I think that's what he wanted to do. And if you watch the debate, we had the big argument and he was so fired up about the need to bring Trump into it and then never brought Trump into it because we had effectively disarmed him. And then the third one absolutely happened, right? Because by the time they got to the end, Pisco was saying the American moral proposition is fully consistent with slavery. The American moral proposition is fully consistent with any horrible thing. Therefore, there's a better moral proposition, presumably whatever his is. So that all these things absolutely happened instantly. So, in legal terms, that's called pulling the thorn. Like you know something's coming, so you're gonna seed the audience about what you're gonna hear next. And by predicting what your opponent's gonna do, it certainly makes the audience primed to view it with some suspicion, which just can be a useful technique. I will say, I was just on this a second ago. I wish I had said this in the debate, but he at one point said American morality, the American moral proposition, is just abiding by the rule of law and the Constitution, right? Well, if that was true, why is he so mad about Trump's false slate of electors? Like, because the argument that Trump put forth was, look, I have this aggressive position. I'm going to see what the vice president does. We'll take it to the Supreme Court. Maybe they rule for me. Maybe they rule against me. But either way, if the Supreme Court ruled in Trump's favor, or if Pence had said, yes, this is the right slate of electors, and the Supreme Court had signed off on it, then the Constitution would have allowed for it. But surely Pisco would have been very mad about that. He would have thought something deeply immoral had happened. And of course, because there has to be some moral framework beyond what you can get away with legally, right? Like, I mean, anyone who works in law knows that law is often the study of what can I get away with. But that's not a moral take. That's a legalistic take. And it's this hollowed out, amoral proposition that was all he was left with. And I don't think that's good enough. I don't think that will armor you against more hostile ideologies that want to take over America.
Yeah, plus it just completely gets away from, once again, just taking it back to the Declaration. And they seem to, both him and Nonfon both laughed at my point. Well, I said in my opening that part of the American moral proposition, when you read the Declaration, is a belief that there is a creator, there is a God. I mean, the Declaration literally says it, that these are endowed by your creator with inalienable rights. And so, uh, to me, of course, I think to any sane person who reads that, you can disagree with it, but the founders, as they wrote that out and wrote that document speaking for the American people, they were identifying that there is a creator, and the creator creates us all equal and gives us all these inalienable rights. And they kind of pointed that as like, apparently, according to you, you to be consistent with the American moral proposition, you have to believe in a God. And it's like, yeah, kinda. Like that's at least in a natural rights philosophy that posits that there is such a thing as natural rights that exist outside of just what the government is willing to give you. And the fact that they were treating that point with such scorn, I think, also once again underscores the point that they have abandoned the American moral
Yeah.
proposition.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. A few basic points there. One, I flat out told him there are ways to get to natural law without belief in God. They're just really complicated and philosophically kind of obtuse, and most people don't know about them, right? And the reason why belief in God factors in so strongly is if you took a poll and you said, like, do you believe in natural rights? And you asked 100 Christians, 99 of them are going to say yes. And the 100th is the one who doesn't know what you're talking about, right? And if you ask atheists, you're going to get like 10% or less, because natural rights are a natural offshoot of belief. You don't actually have to engage deeply with the philosophy to believe in natural rights if you go to church, because it's just going to be entirely consistent with everything you've ever been taught. On the flip side, to do it from a purely atheist perspective is possible, but it's really complicated. And this is what I was trying to tell Pisco about, like the, if you could imagine it like Platonic forms. You could imagine like, okay, you don't believe in God, but you believe that there are certain truths about the universe that exist to be discovered. Like there are some people who believe math is an invention of human minds. That's subjective. But if you believe math is discovered, it's a truth about the universe and we learn it. Just like in like Platonic philosophy, there would be the form of goodness and you learn and then you can move towards it. It's a true thing. It exists. There could be a Platonic form for liberty. There could be a Platonic form for life. There could be a Platonic form for the pursuit of happiness. You could get there, but it's super fucking complicated, right? And almost no one does. But I think what Pisco really wanted to do is that he has this kind of, that's why he kept saying this is Darth Dawkins' presuppositional Christianity, because he has kind of like this flow chart that he uses when he gets sucked into those arguments, which are not really his forte. So he kept trying to apply that framework to what we were saying, which is not, it doesn't really land the same way. And this is, sorry, I know I'm monologuing, but no, this is the great strength of the addition of deists to the Christians. Because, if the document said, we were endowed by our Lord Jesus Christ with certain natural rights, you have the presuppositional Christianity arguments would actually have a foothold. But it doesn't say that. It says God, the God of nature, the creator. It's a broader term. And that broader term brings in deism, like Jefferson, who wrote the document, who was a deist. And that's a belief in God, but not necessarily exactly Christianity. And that broadening of the frame gets you outside the realm of like the presuppositional Christian arguments. It's a broader and deeper concept and more broadly applicable. So I don't know how much of that nuance the audience was soaking in, but like certainly I felt like he was just kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard at that part of the conversation, but it was happening rapid fire. So I mean, maybe it was convincing for some people. I don't know.
Yeah, and someone said earlier that they heard Pisco say he didn't do much prep. I'm trying to see if I can find the comment. said that apparently Pisco said he didn't do. Oh, here it's from Chipping Grove. Pretty sure Pisco said in the beginning that he came into discussion with basically zero prep because he thought he would win with ease. I think that what you notice is him not having any real ideas. Yeah, I mean that seems like I'll admit his point about the kind of the opening point of like, well, how can you say the founders could have owned slaves yet be in such violation of the American moral proposition, yet you're not going to say they abandoned it? Like, I'll admit, yeah, first hearing that kind of put me on the back foot. But then we kind of got us to the directionality retort. But then, yeah, I think beyond that, it was just kind of, I think that summarizes it well. It felt like he was just kind of flying off the cuff and trying to work the conversation back to the things he was comfortable with, which is why I think the defanging right out the gate, the whole this is not going to be a debate about Trump and Republicans and MAGA and just whataboutism all the way back to that, because we did spend about the first 10 minutes after the opening statements on that point specifically. And even I think giving Pisco the most charitable interpretation, like, yes, there is and that's what I think I actually said, which kind of got us past the topic, was we're not saying you can't say, like, as a factual statement, Trump did X, which is bad, therefore Democrats are doing this in response. So long as our actual substantive conversation is going to be about the actual left response and whether or not it's consistent with the American moral proposition. And I think maybe that gave him enough of an off ramp to feel like he won that point. So because he just he refused to get off of it. Like, I have to be able to bring it up. I have to.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to accuse Pisco of lying. I don't know what's in his heart. I don't know what kind of prep he did. I will say that after he lost the debate with me on immunity on Gibbs's channel, his thing was, oh, I didn't read the format carefully. I didn't know there were going to be judges. I didn't know, like X, Y, and Z. I didn't really get into that. So, all I'm going to say about that, because I don't know what he knows, and I don't want to call him a liar. I'm just saying, when we debate and he feels somewhat uncomfortable about how it went, he then says he didn't prep. And this is a thing that's happened more than once. So, but on the flip side, Josiah didn't show up to lick his wounds, which is what normally happens when it's like an absolute beating. So, there's that.
Yeah. Well, I just thought about that because that was kind of the next clip. So I wanted to start getting into Pisco's post debate, just commentary, just because I haven't seen it. I don't think. Have you seen any of it?
I've seen some of it. Okay. So I don't want to pretend that I'm like going in totally blind, but it's interesting because he's amped the fuck up. I saw the beginning at least, and he is high energy. This should be fun.
Yeah, and I wonder. So on that point, on the Josiah point, the fact that it was like past 1:30 by this point, 1:30 in the morning. And I actually just learned, I'm assuming this. I think Josiah actually lives pretty close to me because he posted a No King's Day protest photo back when that happened. And I could see in the background a street sign in a city, and it has a crown on the street sign. And I recognize that because it's Charlotte, and I live just outside Charlotte. So I think it's actually pretty close to me in North Carolina.
I think he's a North Carolina guy.
Yeah. So 1:30 by that point, he was probably in bed, which I really should have been. But,
we all should have been, but it was fun. It was fun.
Oh yeah, it was a great time. But yeah, okay. Well, then let's go ahead and watch some of this and just see, because obviously, I mean, I wish we had some clips or something to go through, but a 4-hour debate, I haven't gone back and watched the whole thing.
Yeah, I've got shorts coming out on my channel, so you guys can watch those.
Perfect. Yeah. Y'all get that on Ryan's channel to get kind of the summary, the highlights and whatnot. But yes, let us witness together the post debate. 1:30 in the morning, amped up. Also didn't study or didn't prep. Let's hear it.
This will be fun. We have a natural law connected to the kind of thing a human is, right?
Okay, but it's just
visual.
Let's go forward a little bit. I think, there you go.
Seriously, dude, I would love to talk about this. What the short answer that I'm going to give is that in a debate about the American moral proposition, it is expressly non-Kantian.
Oh my God, we did it. Holy shit, I didn't know I was getting pre-sub hell. What an absolute destruction. Fucking...
I'm sorry, we only got 5 seconds in, but I want to ask you what your thoughts on that. Do you really think, to me, for him to start getting into this, like, oh, it's just all presuppositional and we can't even talk about it anymore, that felt to me like he kind of knew, or at least He didn't really want to keep going back and forth, so just accuse us of being presuppositional, and therefore the debate dies.
Well, the reason that the presuppositional thing is a bad comparison is that, presuppositional Christianity, for those who don't know, is you're saying that we presuppose the Bible's true and then use that to kind of prove that Christianity is true. Now, he's stretching that analogy to say that we're presupposing the Declaration of Independence is true. But the Declaration of Independence is true. Like, factually speaking, like, we did send this document to England. It was written by our founders. It doesn't have the issues the Bible has, where we're trying to work out, like, what parts are historically accurate, what part, look, like, if we could prove that the Bible was literally true, then everyone should be a Christian tomorrow. That's what that would mean, right? But the Declaration of Independence, we actually know is true. So to me, when he started comparing the Declaration of Independence to what he called Darth Dawkins presuppositional bullshit, I was like, holy shit, we just won the debate. Like, we just won the debate. Because if we're saying this is the American moral proposition and you're calling it Darth Dawkins presuppositional bullshit, how much more of an abandonment could you possibly have shown? And I think he felt good about that. But I would hope that the audience, who's not like his pocket audience, but the more neutral audience, was like, holy shit, there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with this kind of rejection of our founding document.
Yeah, I'm curious too to see the live chat as we go. Maybe after we get through this segment here, we can go through the comment section on the video and do a little bit of fact checking or responses to that.
His audience fucking hates me. They hate me so fucking much. Keep in mind that when I beat him in the immunity debate and then he wanted to have a wrap up, and I was a little mad because he put, like, the clip he put up of you, like, MAGA lawyer caught lying, whatever. He did that to me, and I was a little pissed off about it. So I went to the conversation like, oh, let's have a debate wrap up. And I came in with, like, WWE, the champ is here music. And I had the strap on my shelf over my shoulder and was, like, kind of stunting a little bit. So now his audience, like, really fucking hates me.
Y'all see
that one right there.
Oh,
I got the WWE belt so I could show up in his chat and just be like, whatever, guys. Like, you guys can get as mad as you want, but there were judges. I won. Let's move on from here. But anyway, I'm sure his chat's gonna be fucking deranged.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what we're here for. We love it. We eat it up. That's right.
I'm gonna be honest with you, and this is to Daz's point. I'm not trying to convince his audience. His audience is inconvinced. Like, his audience is far enough on the lefty bell curve. They're not who I'm talking to, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to pitch to a more sensible crowd. But anyway,
yeah,
on every level. I don't know why these people, like, come into these debates with these, like, ill thought out propositions where the meaning of the terms aren't baked into the thing, and there's no, like, common usage to go down, and they just expect to have it be their way, but it's the other.
So yeah, I mean that gets to kind of what we were talking about, and I'm gonna speed it up just to get through.
Move faster.
But that gets to exactly what we were saying of, like, here we are talking about the Declaration as the founding moral document of our country, and here it's just, well, there's just these ill-defined terms, and how do you expect to have a discussion when we can't even agree? Like, the terms themselves, you can't agree on what they mean. And which, remember what Ryan's prediction was that we're going to spend the whole time arguing about definitions, and that effectively is what we did spend the whole time doing. I said to Ryan after we finished, or I think the next day when I was thinking back on it, I think the biggest thing, as far as it would have moved us along further, but I don't even know if it would have actually changed the outcome or anything. But we got really bogged down in debating whether or not objective morality exists, and whether or not what the Declaration says is true as, like, a moral statement. When in reality, that wasn't the proposition. The proposition was just that not whether or not objective morality is true. It's just whether or not the founders believed in it when they built America as a country, and they had that as the founding moral philosophy. And the fact that we got so bogged down on whether or not it was true or not took us away from the point of not just whether or not it was actually the philosophy. And I think if we picked up on that sooner, that might have helped us along.
It kind of depends, right? So I was torn on this because, like I said at the beginning about Daz's comment, one way of approaching the debate would have been to say, like, this is the proposition. You can say it's wrong or stupid if you want to, but that just shows you've abandoned it, right? And try to build off the foundation. But part of me, and I guess the approach I took, and part of it, and maybe I should have thought about doing it the other way, but
because Pisco's so combative, my thought was he's going to spend the whole time attacking. So let him spend an hour talking about how objective morality is stupid and natural law is stupid and the Declaration of Independence is stupid. Like we got bogged down on objective morality, which wasn't really, strictly speaking, necessary because like natural rights is a subset of objective morality. But I guess the thing was, to me, whenever he's arguing against objective morality and saying it's stupid and incomprehensible, he's just saying the Declaration of Independence is stupid and incomprehensible, which is just racking up points for us. So like part of me is like why interrupt him when he's making a mistake?
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I think to then crystallize that, to point that out, to say, hey, chat, every time he says, or hey, viewer, every time he says objective morality, I think the word he used was incoherent repeatedly. Objective morality is incoherent or incomprehensible. Then for us to retort and just say, all right, y'all heard that, right? And just so we're clear, the Declaration is a document that believes in objective morality. He's thereby saying the Declaration is incomprehensible and incoherent. Let's just now ask yourselves, who's abandoned the American moral proposition?
That's a good signpost. That's a good idea, because I think sometimes in a debate this long, I think that's a good technique that I need to start incorporating more. Like you can get lost in the weeds, and signposting towards the actual debate prompt is a great thing to do, especially because like you can bookend it. And I think we both brought it home in the closings, but why wait? You know, like keep hammering it the whole way through. That's a good point.
Yeah. Every opportunity, I think. Yeah, just keep hammering it. Yep, for sure. All right.
Other way, right? Like you're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the left if you include a proposition where the term itself is so opaque and not, suffused with meaning through usage, that it's just going to be a conversation about what the term means. And so I just don't understand what the tactical or strategic proposition was like. Oh, we'll definitely talk about only the left. That's like I think what he wants is to like only talk about the left and not have to answer for the fucking Republican garbage. But even on the term that they established on their own proposition with their own meaning of the term, it would be relevant to bring up the Republican shit. And the thing that they can't really get past is the
Can you pause?
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Right.
But he didn't, right? We worked through it and we agreed that if you can bring up an example where the right is countering the American moral proposition and the left is fighting for the American moral proposition, then that would be fair game. I think we all agreed to that.
Yeah.
Never happened. Right. So, whatever he thinks about this, it wasn't something that he actually did.
This is something to keep in mind. Like you brought up the Trump electors, everything that we can broaden that out to everything the Republicans do that he doesn't like, that he thinks is horrible, but they do it through constitutional legal means. And just ask him every time he's got a huge criticism of whataboutism to the horrible things that the Republicans are doing, and say, well, did they do it legally? Did they do it constitutionally? If so, then what's so bad about it? Like, please explain. And then maybe the thing we never cleared up was that he does have his true definition of a moral proposition that is different from the American moral proposition, but also different from the stated one he gave us, which was just the purely legalistic. Everything that is constitutional and legal is therefore moral.
Yeah, no, he clearly has some kind of moral framework in his head that he thinks is better and superior to the American moral proposition, because the American moral proposition, as he understands it, is this hollowed out legalistic thing, which would have no meaning at all. Like I said, I asked him, and to his credit, he bit the bullet. I said, like, if people amended the Constitution to allow for slavery, would that be within the American moral proposition? And he said, yeah. So if you believe that, then the American moral proposition clearly is not your North Star. Like, you clearly have some other moral proposition in mind.
Yeah, that'd be something to just keep in mind next time. Next time either of us cross paths with him.
Yeah.
Like the thing that turns whether or not you're abandoning the moral proposition has to do like the directionality, whether you're directionally in favor of something closer to objective morality, which isn't clear and it's impossible to suss out, and even the framers didn't know. And so that's why DEI people are abandoning the moral proposition in America, but not slaveholders. And then the fucking scum.
I feel like this next one is going to be at me. But before we get into that, let's want to explain that point, because he really was hung up on that, where we're saying that people who own slaves had not abandoned the moral proposition. But people in 2025 who were these equity, DEI, collective social justice hawks, we're saying they have abandoned the moral proposition, and he just couldn't compute that. He couldn't square that circle. I'll let you explain kind of what our response to that was.
I think this shit's so hilarious, right? Like, all right, like we today have all sorts of intense math that's available to us, like the math that allows you to do crypto blockchains, right? That's like intensely complicated math. Nobody in ancient Greece would have known anything about that math. And if you would ask them a question that relied on understanding that math, they would be looked fucking red in the face, no knowledge. They couldn't answer you, right? Does that mean that math doesn't exist? No, math exists. It's just the ancient Greeks hadn't figured that part out yet, right?
Yeah.
The directionality, of course, matters. Like when you're talking about something that's objective and discoverable, you discover it over time. And in terms of your own personal accountability, one question is, are you violating the moral proposition? The other question is, to what extent are you culpable? And you are much more culpable if history has already taught you this lesson and you are choosing to go the wrong direction. If you are in the process of learning something and in the process of righting a wrong, that's very different than going the wrong direction. And this was explained to him at extraordinary length. I mean, we spent an hour and a half on it practically.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine he doesn't actually understand the point.
Yeah, and you just gave the example of the evolving math, but in the debate we use the example of evolving, I believe, physics, right? You
Yeah.
said you started with Newtonian physics, and then from there, who came next? Was Einstein, right? Was he
Yeah,
next?
with relativity, and then today quantum mechanics. But if you ask Newton about relativity, he wouldn't have known any of that shit. That doesn't mean physics doesn't exist or that the laws of physics don't exist. Newton just hadn't figured them out yet.
Yeah. So we explained it in I think a very coherent analogy, but here we are in the who would someone said the Piscope session or Piscope.
The important thing to understand though about someone like Pisco, and again, I have no hatred in my heart towards Pisco. Like we get along in real life, we get along. But Pisco is, I think, a subjectivist. He's a postmodernist. I don't think he'd use those terms, but I don't think he believes in objective morality. I don't think he believes that there's like a fixed reality that words are pointing towards. In all things, he takes kind of this like flexible postmodern view. And that just makes these things very difficult for him to wrap his head around. And one of the things you always have to know is that when you're debating a postmodernist, they only talk about philosophy or science to the extent it gets them to what they actually care about, which is the politics. That's what they care about. So ultimately, when Pisco talked about this, even on X with me today, I was like, oh, he's like, what did I say? Pisco was big mad. And he said, yeah, I was so mad. And I was like, well, you sounded pretty mad. And he goes, oh, that's just how I am in political debates. This is only barely a political debate. This was mostly a philosophic debate. But that's not how he views it. It's a political debate because that's what his interest is. And I haven't seen the whole thing, but I expect that that's going to come out as he talks about this.
Yeah, I would expect so as well. But let's continue on our gallant journey.
Comeback tactics to be like, oh, Pisco doesn't believe in American moral, like you just heard me lay out what I mean by the term, and then you lie about that, and then him to be like, oh my God, you think that the American moral proposition includes slavery when that was just like trivially true based on the definition I gave and the meaning that I ascribe to it. That doesn't mean I'm in favor of slavery. So he's just purely, it is the worst. And I think I understand it is because he thinks all of his moral attitudes are God's law. I think that's it, because I legit asked him, do you think that it's bad?
But that's the thing though, we never ascribed to him personally like, oh, obviously you must believe in slavery then. It's like, no, which by the way, I don't know, are you familiar with Dean Withers at all?
In fairness, I might have. Okay. Like I think at one point I said, so you would be perfectly okay with slavery then? And he said no, right?
Personal, right.
What I was trying to tease out, and I think it did tease it out, by the way, it pissed him off, but whatever. Like, it's a debate. I don't mind pissing someone off in a debate. Is exactly what we were talking about before. He said slavery is fine under his version of the American moral proposition, but not fine under Pisco's moral proposition. So what does that mean? Pisco has a separate and in his mind better moral proposition, which is the entire point.
right? The entire point of the debate is to show that the left views America's moral proposition as this shriveled, useless fucking thing and have moved on to their better moral proposition. And that's exactly what he admitted. Now, it annoyed him that I asked that question, but that's fine. Like, it's a debate. You can annoy each other in a debate. Like, the heart of the matter is he thinks the America's moral proposition is garbage. He thinks it's like this meaningless thing that is just purely legalistic, which, by the way, you don't even need an American moral proposition for that. Like, what's the use of a moral proposition if the whole thing's resolved by law?
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you truly don't need it. That's something I need to do some more reading on to get a full grasp. But the French Revolution, as I understand it, as basically being this attempt to let's do the American Revolution, but without the whole natural law, natural rights, objective morality angle. Let's just have it all be purely built on secular humanism and secular reason, that we can reason our way to correct conclusions. And what the reason their way to was thousands upon thousands of heads rolling by the guillotine, and just it was a complete failure. At least that's my kind of 30,000 foot understanding. Like I said, I need to learn more details. I could not do a debate on the French Revolution.
Yeah, nor could I. And it's tough because when you're in a debate like that, you got to kind of limit yourself to stuff that you can very easily defend. Because I don't know if the audience, if you've ever been in a debate like this, like when you say something and someone calls you on it, and you've got to be like, you're either prepped or you're not, and it's tough. Like you got to be locked and loaded.
Yeah.
So I certainly wasn't going to take a flyer on that, but intuitively I think you're right. And that would be a good thing to research. But anyway, I think that this is a very revealing clip of what Pisco thinks, because he's upset that I pointed this out. But of course, what he should be upset about is that he has such a dim view of America. But
yeah, and that's why, like, I give Pisco credit as a leftist who, I don't know if he says he's a leftist or not, but someone who is solidly on the left, who still actually says like he's pro-America and pro-Constitution. Like, I give him a lot of credit for that, and he said in our debate that he likes the founding fathers. So I do respect him, and I think too, something that was interesting. I think we both brought up the fact that these are not enemies of ours; these are our friends on the other side.
Yeah,
we don't have ill will towards either of them personally.
Oh, he did call me a rat.
yeah. Well, I called you a rat, called me a dipshit, and et cetera, et cetera.
But honestly, I actually don't mind those optics. Like, I don't know how this works on the internet. In real life, if you're in a courtroom and you're being gentlemanly and the other side is getting like a little too aggressive, it plays terribly. It plays so badly for them. Like, people, it really turns, like, even especially if there's a jury in the room, like you cannot do that in front of a jury. Like, the jury is going to think you're a fucking moron and kind of a bad person, and they don't like you. And juries will vote against you if they don't like you. So now on the internet, I don't know, like, because calling someone dipshit's a good clip. So maybe the laws are different on the internet.
Yeah, you drive engagement, you drive followers, because people on the internet, they're not looking for let's just all have a kind, civil discussion. They're looking for their blood sports champion who's going to go own and wreck and destroy with facts and logic. And I guess, it's just kind of the nature of the game. But I agree. I still think civility, and not just being civil for the sake of it, but being civil while still being able to clearly articulate your position and articulate that you strongly disagree and here's exactly why, and lay that out in a way that makes sense. Because certainly if you're just being civil to the point where you're just getting walked over the whole time, then now you're doing yourself a disservice, because now you look like a doormat. But to be civil while also being able to push back, it's a fine balance. But I think it is the correct approach.
Zero Fucks asked the $1 million question though: which one is the true Pisco? The angry Pisco or the non-debate mode Pisco? And I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I don't know. I would say that since I got off the centrist tact, and when I was on the centrist tact, he could kind of like endlessly talk about how bad Trump was.
Yeah.
And it's like when he talks to Connor, like, and I'd be like, yeah, Trump's real bad. And then he'd be like, oh, okay. And then we'd stop talking. He seemed to like me more when I was just serving up punching bags for him. But I don't know. I certainly don't know the answer to that question. It's an interesting one. I'd like to find out though.
Well, the enlightened centrists are the easiest to punch because you're sitting up on that fence and both sides want to punch you to get you off the fence. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's so easy because you can't really swing back, you know.
Yeah.
So it certainly, since I got off the fence, my life has been easier in debates because now I'm allowed to actually hit back. When you're in the center, there's like really nothing you can do. Like you have to put 8 disclaimers on every fucking word you say, which is, you know, you never get anywhere. But anyway,
And you're taking it from both sides, which is just
still do, by the way. Hilariously, as we're doing this, I was just like, some idiot on X was just talking to me about how America is not a propositional nation and it's like a white pure ethno state. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, you know, I got to fucking fight the lefties on this, and now I got to fight the right on this. You know, so, it's you know,
but I think so long
it's a fight worth picking.
I think it's a good bellwether. So long as we're getting that kind of heat from folks who say they're on the right, then I think that means we're doing a good job because we're holding down the fort as the reasonable right that is willing to fight the left in all of its insanity, but also fight the strains of the right that are threatening to take over and rule the roost. That we have to work really hard at not letting them do that. The way the left failed to do so, the way the left played footsie with the far left long enough that now the far left has taken over. That we just have to be just completely reject that. But that's another topic for another time.
All right, let's see what our buddy has to say.
Yeah.
Or sorry, do you think that it's against God's law to have quotas on boards of directors? And he's like, yeah, probably against God's law. Like, what the fuck? So God gives a fuck about like quotas, and he could have fooled me. I mean, he's doing a bunch of fucking crazy shit in scripture, although then he wanted to say it's not reliant on scripture. Well, how can it not be reliant on scripture if that's like God's revelation or something? And so you're an objective moralist, and other atheistic objective moralists are consistent, but not those who share all your political views and are not objective moralists. And like, this is what people understand. They might like, is this meta-ethical? No one understands this shit except people who are steeped in these issues. No one would like determine that that's like the centerpiece is this grounding of meta-ethics. And so that's just like an absurd. And then like they just start saying circular shit. Yeah. If you
okay, can you pause? There was so much fucking interesting stuff there. Holy shit, that was fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
So the first, just to say this out loud so everyone knows this, I have the phrase American deist in my X tag. I talk about deism all the time. I am culturally Christian, but I am not religiously Christian. I am a deist. So like when I say that I'm not relying on scripture, I am not relying on scripture because scripture is expressly reserved for the Christian faith, and I have no basis to use that and to rely on that. And the American moral proposition is phrased to be open to both Christians and Jewish people and deists, which is why it's phrased about natural law, which is something like Thomas Aquinas believed in, that Christians believe in, that Jews believe in, that deists believe in. It's the idea that there is an objective standard and that we can move towards it. Now, if this was an overtly Christian document, you wouldn't need to rely on natural law because you could just point to scripture. It would solve the problem for you. It is not an overtly Christian document, though it was written by mostly Christians. So like there's a balance there, which Pisco seems to totally blow right past. So first of all, like, of course, I'm not relying on scripture. If I was relying on scripture, this would be a very different conversation than the one we had. And then he said this other fascinating thing where he said, it's this thing that nobody knows about. Like he's appealing to the fact that most people don't understand this. Well, first of all, if something is objectively true, it doesn't matter who believes in it. Like 2 + 2 is 4, even if no one on earth is smart enough to know it. 2 + 2 was 4 when there were only monkeys and no humans and nobody knew 2 + 2 was 4. They still knew 2 + 2 was 4. That was still true, even if no one knew it. So that's point A, like knowledge has nothing to do with it. But B, I think it just reveals that his total discomfort with the concept of an objective moral standard. Like that's really what he's fighting against. It's just an alien concept to him completely. And why is it an alien concept? Why doesn't anybody, like he's saying, nobody knows what this is. Why does nobody knows what this is? Because every teacher is a fucking leftist. Yeah. Nobody teaches this philosophy in school. So that's the progressive move, right? We're going to teach your kids something. And then when your kids don't believe in your beliefs, we're going to say your beliefs aren't true because nobody believes in it. Well, why don't they believe in it? Because we didn't teach it to your kids, right? So that's the progressive circle jerk. And that's honestly why this project's so important, is because this shit has to be taught. It's a philosophy. You have to teach it to people.
It's not a thing that people are going to, become aware of all by themselves. It took hundreds and thousands of years of human histories to reach this pinnacle of philosophical achievement. You can't expect people to reinvent the wheel on their own, but it's anyway. So there's a lot loaded into Pisco's framework there that is like this objectively progressive, subjective view.
But I think too, the part I was disagreeing with the hardest on was he kept trying to make this point about like our argument or our description of the moral philosophy, the moral foundation, is like this ultra complicated, meta ethical system of beliefs that no one can understand unless they're deeply steeped in the history and the philosophy and the literature. And like my response is no. I think everyone's got a pretty like, yes, it took a long time, it took thousands of years to get to the point where we know kind of how we can boil it down into a couple key points. But guess what? We boiled it down into a couple of key points. And it's this idea that we've got these inalienable rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, which, the original is life, liberty, property. But it's just these ultimately rather simple fundamental concepts of what's mine is mine. You can't take it from me. And if you do, if you're the government and you do, we're going to carve out exceptions, but you got to give me just compensation to acknowledge that what's mine is mine. So that's on the property side of things. The life and liberty, like, without, you can't deprive those without due process of law. Just saying that we are going to have a system of law that's going to protect these inherent rights that everyone just intuitively understands. And so I think to try and just kind of hand wave it away is like this ultra like you have to be like a true student of philosophy, which maybe that's what we're trying to create. Like we would love if more people were students of philosophy, but to understand this philosophy that we are advocating for, it's really not that hard. And in fact, my first exposure to it was literally in middle school. It was in 7th grade in civics class, learning about some of these founding documents and the principles that they stood for. So I don't know, that felt like a really cheap way to try and escape how simple how simple our argument was. But I think this is a common tactic of the left to try and gin it up into this like really overcomplicated thing to make it sound like, to try and make it sound really overcomplicated, when I think that's the task the right has, is we have to communicate to people, no, these actually are really simple concepts.
Well, this is why the right has to get involved in education. Because like, if you think about what natural law really means, it means that like right and wrong exist. There's a real standard that you can be judged against. There's a real right, there's a real wrong, at least in some cases. And if you ask any 5-year-old, 6-year-old, they're going to say that. They're going to say it's wrong, it's unfair, it's bad. Like they're going to speak in those terms. It's totally natural for a human to speak that way. In order to find it unusual to think that there's some kind of objective standard, you have to have gone through this kind of like liberal education that leads you to this postmodern thing where you start saying, well, there is no true interpretation. There's only many interpretations, and everyone has their own subjective viewpoint. And because they have their own subjective viewpoint, everything is in fact subjective. That's actually a very complicated position. No one comes to that intuitively. You have to be taught Foucault and Derrida and the postmodernists to understand that point. But that's the progressive move. They force feed people fucking postmodernism, and then they come out the other side and say, man, that objective morality seems complicated.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? It's only complicated because you've been brainwashed into this very particular ideology. But anyway, that's just...
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
It's really fun.
Except that I'm right about everything and I have God's command. Wouldn't it follow that the DI people are against God's plan? Like, yeah, I guess. If that's how you define it. It's like, well, Jesus Christ.
But okay, on that point, he's making it sound like all we were saying the whole time was, well, the Bible says so, or God says so, therefore we're correct in our arguments. But I don't know that we appealed a single time to, well, God says so, therefore we're right. Yes, we're appealing to God, I guess, as the source for the natural rights. But then, I mean, we can have a very nuanced debate about, what does that entail? Or how does that apply practically to all the different facets?
We never applied to divine command theory.
Yeah.
We never said that God came down and told the founding fathers that this is the right thing to do. We appeal to natural law. And like most deists, for example, like my friend Alex, if we have him on the podcast, like most deists believe that God created the universe and was like a clockmaker. He wound it up and let it go, and he's never intervened since then. It was just that one moment at the beginning. That's the most common deistic belief. So in their view, there is no divine intervention. There are no divine commands. There's just us trying to figure out his nature and what's true about us in the universe, right? So it's an essentially rational enterprise where you're just trying to learn what the law is, what the standards are over time. It doesn't rely on revelation or commandments. Now, if you're a Christian, then you can color it with revelations in your faith and commandments. But like the actual founding document doesn't require any of those things, which is why the word creator was used, which is why the word nature's God was used, to expressly move away and broaden from those things, because there were multiple faiths in America. There were Quakers and Protestants and Jews. Like there, if you can't actually make it faith specific, because we had religious diversity, even if it wasn't like the same we have today, we did have some religious diversity in the country, and the founders were taking that into account.
Yeah, and built it into the Constitution. It is the First Amendment, which says it's the two prongs. It's both Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So both the government, Congress, will not institute a state religion, but also Congress will make no law that prohibits any of the various religions that come from being inhibited from the free exercise of any religion that is here. So yeah, no, this is very well built into the understanding that the founders had, that we are not appealing to just a purely sectarian, this is just Jesus commands it. We're going to agree that there is a creator, that our rights have to come from a creator, but beyond that, people are going to be free to exercise their faith as they see fit. So yeah, but I think Chipingro got it right. I think straw man here, but I guess
I mean, I get wanting to tell your audience how well you did, but if this is his wrap up of why he won the debate, I'm feeling more and more comfortable that we won the debate. But anyway, that's me being petty.
I'm feeling that way too. Yeah.
Then he admits, like, it's like nearly impossible to know the, like, and it's all funneled through our subjective. Then hold the fuck, like, how do you know you're right? Then you're coming in with this like condescending attitude, and you can't even ground why your objective morality take is more justified, because you acknowledge that it's all funneled through your subjective lens. And so who are you to say the DEI people are less wrong about the meaning of the term equality and what the framing generation meant about that? Especially because they tried to have it both ways. Because on the one hand, they're like, this is what the framers meant. Oh, but not really specifically, because they would be against getting rid of slavery immediately. They'd be against women voting and integration of schools. And so it's God's will. So it's God's version. But when the framers strayed from the God, they weren't straying from the underlying moral principle. But the DI people are, because they're woke assholes. Like, this is like one of the, and I'm so glad actually that I spent time over the course of years listening to these precept shit, because like once you see it starts to rear its head and all these different, I'm like, oh my God, this is why Andrew Wilson won't debate me, is because the foundation is literally nonsense gibberish. It's literally nonsense gibberish.
Yeah.
So that's the spirit I was hoping came across to the audience. And it's tough because I know like the chat here is going to be super biased, and like Pisco's chat's going to be super biased. I did go check Sarah's comments because I thought that would be the fairest place to check, and they seem to think we won. But like that's what I was hoping to expose during the debate, where he's like, you have this objective moral framework. He conflates it with divine command theory, right? He's talking about it as if like I'm claiming that God came down from the heavens and personally told me that DEI is wrong. Where what I'm saying is there's a standard, and I think the standard applies in the following way for the following reasons, and I'm going to present you my argument for it. But he thinks this is presuppositional nonsense. He thinks the values in the Declaration of Independence, as expressed, are presuppositional, incomprehensible, nonsensical garbage. That's what he believes. And I mean, what better evidence could there be that he has abandoned America's moral proposition than that statement? That's exactly the spirit I was hoping everybody would see, and I hope they did see during the debate.
Yeah, and you got me. I'm going down to Sarah's comments as well. Yeah, they were more favored to us, but there was one guy commented 3 separate times against us. But oh well,
can't win them all.
Yeah, no, it's all good. All right,
and all these people actually buy it. In order to have intelligibility in the rules of logic, you need to have God. It absolutely delusional. And then to say that that's the American moral, like, they were disagreeing with each other, right? Because one of those assholes, Gen Z guys, like, belief in the religion is a necessary American value, for the American moral proposition.
No, you can roll the tape back. I'm not going to, but I can just tell y'all now. You can roll the tape back. That is not the point I was making. I've made the point. The point I said in the debate, I've already said here tonight, which is that the mere acknowledgement, it's indisputable that the Declaration acknowledges that rights come from a creator. It doesn't specify who the creator is. It just says it is a creator, and you can disagree with that assessment, but you can't deny that that is in fact what the Declaration says. And that was the point. That was the only point I was making, to say if you want to be consistent with the American moral proposition, you have to acknowledge that there is a creator who has bestowed upon us natural rights. Yeah. So, and I don't remember me disagreeing really on.
No, he was taking something you said and taking it out of context and trying to make it a little bit bigger than it was. I mean, I will say this though, and I think it's I mean, I don't have stats, but I think it's true. Like, it's highly, highly correlated. It, like, the number I've met, like, I think one or two people in my life who, from a purely atheist perspective, would agree that natural rights exist. Like, I don't, it's honestly one or two. And I talk about philosophy a lot. And I actually do like Philosophy Bro on Twitter, and I'm counting all those people too. Like, it's a highly unusual position. It is theoretically possible. I don't actually know if I even think it works. Like, I might think it's like unsound, but at least they've advanced it. Whereas, on the religious side, it's almost universally understood. Like, if you go up to anybody of any Christian denomination, even like you go up to anyone who's like a practicing Jew, and you say, like, does God write the moral law in our heart? They're like, oh yeah, of course. Like, is everybody a divine individual worthy of moral dignity? And they're like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like, it's like these are intuitive on the right. And that actually matters, by the way, because if you want to pass down this philosophy, you could teach everybody the philosophy in like real detail, or you could just have religious people, so like, and I think that like religion's easier and more appealing to the masses and works better. And like, there's a reason why there's never been a lot of deists, but there's always been a lot of Christians. It's because, it's just deism doesn't have any stories to tell. It doesn't replicate well. So I think that there's a, I think there's a disdain there, like a real disdain for religious people, for religious thought, for objective morale. Like, I feel some people. Zero Fox was asking earlier, like, which one's the KFAB and which one's the real Pisco. I do think Pisco has real disdain for religion, and I think that's showing here.
Yeah, I would not disagree. With that, but. All right. Oh, yeah. Real quick before we got back into it, I'm curious what you think. I have no stats to back any of this up, but the time talked breakdown, because I think if we broke it down 50-50 between our side and their side, I feel like you and I were about 30% you, 20% me, maybe a shade touch higher, like maybe 32-18. For them, I felt like it was like 45-5. So I don't. Are you in the same ballpark? Because
he didn't let Nonfon talk, which is actually too bad, because I think Nonfon understood the topic better. Partially because Nonfon shows up in chat sometimes. So like Nonfon knew what I was talking when he read the prompt, he knew what I meant, because he's been in chat and heard me talk about it. But also, I mean, Nonfon does philosophy. So like, he talks about, utilitarianism and his belief that it's an objective moral framework. And I've heard him talk on his stream about natural rights and why he thinks they're not like a real thing, but in fact are just heuristics. So I think he actually would have pointed, if he had talked more, it would have been a more productive debate. Like, he early was trying to move towards, I think, which is the stronger argument on their side, which is the epistemology argument. Like, let's say that this is true. How do you know that modern equity is not within this practice? And that would have been a more interesting conversation to have. But we had to do Pisco's poorly thought through slavery example for an hour and 15 minutes, despite I think debunking it in the first 10.
Yeah, we never really got to that, because I tried to get us there with the court packing conversation, but like, let's get into some actual practical applications of what the left is kind of up to these days, to see, because we talked about equity kind of the whole time as our practical example, but even then it's like we're still arguing over definitions of what is equity, what is DEI, and then Pisco, he kept taking us back to the the founders and slavery.
Yeah.
And
The reason I like equity is that equity is so obviously contrary to the idea of individual rights.
yeah,
You know, like I have a lot of criticisms of the left, but some of them take a more winding road. You know what I mean? Like some of them like it's just bad. I don't like the policy, right? Or like if somebody said like, I think America should be more involved in foreign affairs in Israel, and someone said, I think America should be less involved in foreign affairs and with Israel. I don't think that is a natural rights issue.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of strikes me as a policy issue. So like it's tricky because you want to be able to back the example all the way down, especially when peace goes in fucking like, you know, every sentence just fucking jumping at you mode.
Yeah. It's a ferocious attack dog. All right.
Oh my god. Every time like they get aggravated that will you talk about DI yet? Holy shit. Well, why don't you make a proposition about DI then? Why try to sneak in is DI right or wrong conversation into a debate where the proposition is something else, right? Like if you want to talk about my ethical view, why don't you structure a debate about it? Why have this weird proposition where you can like bootstrap and sneak it? It's because they want to say everything we believe is backed by God and backed by the framers and it's all objective and these people are fucking crazy and everything you believe is bad and sucks and slavery and this and that. Like, and Gen Z was like not even understanding the slavery point at all. He's like, you guys are saying that we believe in slavery and we support slavery. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. Like, no, that's not the point. The point is
that was a great impression, I must say.
All right, chat. How good was that impression? Was that are we buying the Scotty O impression or no?
That was if I closed my eyes, I would have been like, why are my lips moving? Why am I speaking thoughts without thinking about them? This is wow. That was a good one. Yeah. Any thoughts on anything he just said right there? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to avoid the typing doom. I think now he's kind of just venting, right? Like he seems. Yeah. I think he's kind of said his piece. I don't think there's anything really new there, except that he wants to make it seem like we're the subjective ones because we're saying that we believe in what the document says. Right. And that, you know, that it's merely some kind of like religious affectation, which, I mean, again, he can say that all he wants, but that just shows the disdain he has for the American moral proposition.
Yeah. That was good. I hope I get more impressions. Let's see.
Being in favor of slavery doesn't mean that you're against the American moral proposition. It's not sufficient. So going against the American moral proposition is not enough to be abandoning it, right? So there's something else that needs to be in conjunction with going against the moral proposition for you to abandon it. And so that is directionally, are you like, well, what does directionally mean separate from are you against it, right? Like, is there a directionality separate from being against something? That's a concept that wasn't sussed out or clarified.
Oh, wait, I got to highlight this comment. Gen Z did better here than usual, though, for real. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the reference is to the, I've only done the one. Well, gosh, you and me shut down, and then I did a snap debate, and then maybe he's talking about my Destiny debate. Yeah, that one's probably not as good, but
that's really funny. You got a fan.
Yeah, because I am weird. Open invitation. Come on the channel anytime. Would love to have you.
It's gibberish. It's fucking gibberish. Non-fun, I think, had some great responses there. And I love because I think he has this particular normative view, and Brian was so, you can tell he's so fucking uncomfortable, where he's like, I think you're a utilitarian, and so it's like, dude, you can be an objective moral realist and be a utilitarian. What is your argument that they're not objective moralists? And he literally admitted, I don't have an argument for that. I don't have an argument.
Yeah, I was gonna get your reaction to that.
I didn't reluctantly admit this. Utilitarians some of them are objective, some of them are not. They claim to be objective. What I didn't want to get into the weeds on is that like when they claim to be objective, it's fucking bullshit. It's like it doesn't work because for a lot of reasons, but most utilitarians claim that their theory is objective, at least in principle. But I also knew this about non-fon going into it. I've had the conversation with him, so it's not like it's not like I was guessing. You know,
and
like
I had no background. I almost asked because I remember you talking about the shrimp welfare guy, and I almost asked during the debate, "Is this that guy?"
But yeah, he's one of the shrimp welfare guys.
Yeah, I pieced it together that it was. So I didn't want to take away from the debate. But
I would have hit him for that if he had spoken more. But like hitting him for the shrimp welfare thing when he talked like fucking 5% of the time didn't make any sense.
Yeah, but I kind of pieced that together that you and him had already spoken before and kind of dove into his philosophy, and you had very well understood that he was a utilitarian, and so I don't get this characterization from Pisco of you like not really you're kind of dancing around the issue. It's like no, you pretty clearly stated in the debate like, well, non-fun here, he's a utilitarian, and then XYZ after that.
Well, because Pisco did a goalpost shift. He like we're saying natural law is the base is the American moral proposition, and Pisco was saying, well, natural law is part of objective morality. So if objective morality is false, natural law is false. So I'm going to attack objective morality, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we had this whole conversation about objective morality, because if he's attacking it, you kind of have to defend it. But of course, natural law is totally different than utilitarianism, and only one of them can be true.
Yeah.
Right. So if natural law is true, utilitarianism is false, and vice versa. So, just because a theory is couched as an objective theory doesn't mean that all objective theories are true. In fact, it stands to reason that only one theory can be true objectively, if any of them are true objectively.
Yeah, true. There can only be one.
Yeah, Highlander rules.
Yes, exactly. Speaking of, I'm excited for the new Highlander movie. I'm not a fan of remaking and rebooting everything, but that is one I'm excited for. It's the John Wick director, and Henry Cavill's in it, and he got injured on set filming it, which means they're going hard. So that one side.
Oh, hey, non-fun. What up, buddy?
Yeah, a
Or
non-natural
objectivist, hedonistic act utilitarian. Nice. Yeah. Non-fun, buddy, I'm glad you're here. I really wish, I was saying earlier, I don't know if you were here, non-fun, but I kind of wish that you had been given more airtime in that debate. I thought that you, with all respect to Pisco, had a more sophisticated understanding of the topic. And whenever you interjected, I think at one point, I was putting clips together recently, and I think one of the clips starts with me saying, like, non-fun, that was really well articulated, because like there some of the points you were making I thought were advancing the ball substantively. So glad you're here, and hope next time that we debate you get more airtime.
That's right. And yeah, just to clue you in, non-fun, we kind of spent our whole time talking about our takeaways from the debate. Now we're just going through Pisco's post-debate thoughts, the 1:40 in the morning delirious, sleep-deprived thoughts. And but it's been good. It's been a good insight into kind of his thoughts on this debate. Yeah.
Whole fucking thing. It's absolutely wild. Yeah, I think non-fun did a good job. You're doing a good Jordan Peterson. What do you mean by that? Yeah. Well, hang on. I think this is because a stab at me. Like they were so
that is totally a stab at Pisco, and I'm glad he's realizing, and we'll see what he says about it. But because that's what he did the whole time. That is what it was. It was. Well, what do you mean by moral? What do you mean by morality? What do you mean by? Yeah, it was words that I was not expecting to have to. I was expecting to have to fight over definitions, but some of them were. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe it was the right tactic, maybe it wasn't. But to me, the more time he spent saying, like, how could anyone possibly know what the Declaration of Independence means? That's just more and more separation between his position and the American moral proposition, right? So, like, a more sophisticated tactic, I think, would have been the one that non-fun wanted to do, which was accept the American moral proposition is true and then argue the left hasn't abandoned it.
Yeah.
But this one, while I think technically, like if you were asking, like in a debate land, does this prove your point? Like it technically is a valid, like it's a valid line of argument to go down. It just shows that you don't personally believe this, and just makes it clear how much disdain you have for the moral philosophy that the country was founded on.
Yeah. Indeed. All right.
Listen, on this point, I think this guy's too. As though I'm in bad faith trying to be like, what do you mean by the American moral proposition? To see if I agree that the left is abandoning it. Well, if you mean by American moral proposition, MAGA, yes, the left is abandoning MAGA or something, right? If by American moral proposition you mean racist views or something, yeah, I think the left is abandoning that or something, whatever you want to say. So my answer on whether I think the left is abandoning the American moral proposition turns on what this fucking means. And this isn't a term of art, right? Like the American moral proposition is not a term of art, a defined term somewhere, or in common vernacular. Raise your hands. How many of you have heard of that fucking phrase before in your life as like a defined phrase? Like, is that a commonly used phrase in your various industries in your various life?
That just seems, that seems like such a narrow, like how many, like, because he's using he's using his own terms of art, common trade and usage in practice, and it's like, and that was my moment. My shining moment was to say, let me just Google it then. And every article that came up referred to the Declaration, specifically the passage we were talking about. And I'll take a wild stab. I don't think you had to Google it to see what the American moral proposition refers to know exactly what it was. And neither did I. I was just operating. So that was a complete. I was, they say in court, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. I completely said that without knowing the answer to it. But that's how confident I was that if I Googled it, it would back up what we were saying.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course, and I think that there's a weird sleight of hand there, right? Because, and this is where I think it is Chipingo. It is term of art is lawyer jargon. It comes from IP, so it's absolutely lawyer jargon. But there's a weird thing that he's doing there, which is like, if there's no such thing as an American moral proposition, can America be a propositional nation without a proposition? Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? So there has to be an American moral proposition. Even if he thinks it's a different one, there has to be one. And I don't think it even makes sense on his view to say there isn't one, right? And in fact, he didn't say there isn't one. He just thought it was abide by the Constitution, which is basically nothing at all as propositions go, because you're already required to do that legally. But
and that's such a nice liberating place to be, where if you take the mindset that the Constitution is simply what we say it to be, and therefore if the height of morality is just doing what we say, then to me that's the seductive side of these like living Constitution and judicial interpretivists, whatever term you want to use. People who say that the Constitution does not have a fixed meaning, it simply has the meaning that we decide to apply to it. That's ultra intoxicating and seductive, because as lawyers, if we're the ones tasked with writing the laws, executing the laws, interpreting the laws, and there's no higher morality, nothing that exists outside of the law as we say it as humans, then that puts all the power with us in our profession. And that's a great feeling to have, to be like, yes, we are the rulers essentially. But it takes a great level of restraint and humility to say, no, we are not the be all end all. We are not the final authority on these matters. Our duty is to best transcribe and codify the higher power, the higher law, into our human systems, and try and build a functioning society that way. And that's what the founders did. And that's why I just don't understand the great confusion here of not understanding or accusing us of having a proprietary definition over the American moral proposition.
Ironically, his view boils everything down to politics.
Yeah.
Because if the American moral proposition is just abide by the law and abide by the Constitution, and then the politics decide how that happens, well, the politics are determined by people's morality. And then each faction has their own morality. So then whichever side wins the election was right. You know what I mean? Like it just becomes this kind of like endless subjective game, but there's really nothing of the American moral proposition left in that circumstance. And we already said this, but he of course doesn't believe this, because if people voted to reinstate slavery, he'd be losing his mind. If Trump had actually passed his slate of electors and made himself president in 2020, and the Supreme Court had blessed it and said that's totally constitutional, he'd be losing his mind. So clearly the fact that all those things could be done legally is not enough, right? There's some other moral proposition, and that's what he's fighting for. But he doesn't think the American moral proposition exists in any way that's meaningful or binds everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this doesn't have like a specific meaning and so why do that? Why not just like cash in the meaning of these phrases in ways that people understand? And the one time when Gen Z lawyer was like, you guys rejected the commonly understood meaning of American. Like, really? What's your case for that, dipshit? That this is the commonly understood. Where's your dictionary? Where's your poll that you took? Where's the
Google is my poll. I rest my case.
The meaning in a textbook of American moral proposition, where you're going to establish it's the commonly used definition, is the moral realism entailed in the Declaration of Independence, not the whole document, just that a basic, meta-ethical view.
Yeah, I want to see what you think about that, because he tried to get us with another gotcha by pointing to like a different part of the Declaration that just said something about the king and something bad that he did, as like, well, is this a moral prescription in your view? And it's like, Well, yeah, what's your answer to that?
Well, he did a few really funny things where this is why, again, I was kind of hoping Non-Fon would have more airtime, because he made some points that I was just like, these are very silly points. So like, if you read the Declaration, it lays out a moral proposition and then applies the moral proposition to certain things. So it says, this is our moral proposition to protect individual rights, to protect life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, natural law, and that if it's infringed upon too much, you can rebel against the government. And then they list all the ways that England has infringed, right? So
Yeah.
he listed one of the things that England did that violated natural law. So that's just, it's an example of of violating the moral proposition. He did a similar thing later where he said, like, when they say we hold these truths to be self-evident, isn't that a subjective statement? And I was like, it's obviously both. Like, if I say I believe in natural law, I am both saying subjectively I believe in natural law, but I am also making a claim that natural law is in fact true objectively. I'm making both claims simultaneously. And even if you didn't buy that, when we say we hold these truths to be self-evident, the we is America. So even if you think it's subjective, you're within the subjective. It's supposed to apply to you, and you are rejecting it, which is the whole point. But anyway, yeah, there were a few times when, like, these were just kind of very non-productive lanes to go down, because I think they were kind of self-evident. But in any case,
To use a term of art.
yeah.
Yeah, and now that I'm actually thinking about it, like, the Declaration, all it is IRAC or CRECSAC or however analytical framework you want to break it down. Like in law school, they teach you, for all the non-law school people, that when you do legal writing, they teach you what's called IRAC, which is to frame your writing as you state the issue, state the rule, analyze, apply the facts to the rule, and then conclude. The Declaration is an IRAC. It states the rule of what the rule is, that we are all created equal and inalienable rights, all that stuff. And now the rest of the document is application of the facts of King George, what he did factually, and how it is inconsistent with the rule, and then concludes, therefore we're declaring independence. Like, it's basic legal writing as far as at least what they teach in law school. Now, granted, maybe, not every law school, though. No, that seems like a pretty staple of how it's taught everywhere.
Yeah, I know. He was just trying to he was just trying to throw hand grenades.
Yeah, that was another, like, attempted gotcha that wasn't prepared or thought out. It was like, let me just see if this works, and then it just kind of fell flat on its face. But
you did amazing job trying to get to frame of the debate and doing meta commentary as a weasel. But yeah, no, because I saw it right away, and then they do this kind of, oh my god, you're attacking my character. Like, after they drop bombs, you're like, so Ryan goes at the start, he goes, oh, I knew you would try to do this, Pisco. Ready? I knew you would try to do this. I knew you would try to.
I don't even wear glasses.
What? Yeah, I was about to say. No, unironically, I had to look back over to you to see, has Ryan worn glasses the entire time I've known him, and I just never realized it, and that would be the most awkward, embarrassing thing. I literally looked over, like, with that thought in mind, and then was like, wait, no, he's never worn glasses.
I think his Scotty O voice is better than his Ryan impression, but we'll see.
Yeah.
By the term American moral proposition, I knew you would try to argue that it's relevant that left is taking certain views on certain actions by certain people. I knew you would try to do that. I didn't call it, and then pretend like, oh, I'm not implying anything. Pansy shit, and multiple fucking falsehoods and attempted lies. And so yeah, I'm gonna call that shit out, because that shit is so fucking aggravating. And these guys, and every time it's pulling teeth to get a fucking, like, I didn't even ask the question. Will you agree? Literally,
this is. He gets so fucking mad after we debate. It it makes, I think it's really funny. He gets so fucking pissed off. Like, and he really doesn't like it when I try to be civil. And like, for some reason, this irritates him. Jason, I agree with you. I think he is projecting quite a lot. And like, I'm not saying that I don't throw elbows in debates. I absolutely throw elbows in debates, So, it's not like I'm not engaging in tactics as well. But for some reason, me trying to be civil and then, debate and go after it and try to win just makes him so goddamn angry. So yeah. I take some joy out of that. I whenever I see him do something like that, I'm like, holy shit, I did something right.
It's the double whammy of having the air of civility, which is sincere. Like, it is not a faux, we're just pretending to be these nice guys while we're really dropping these like really venomous and like just horrible bombs on them the whole time, but doing it with a smile. So it's like, oh, we're just the nice guy. It's like, no, it's a sincere civility paired with competent knowledge and debate tactics. And that's I think that's the double whammy of frustration, because if you get one or the other, then it's like, okay, then that's a pretty good debate to be in from Pisco's perspective, because if it's pure civility without the competent debate skills, then it's just, okay, I can walk all over you the whole time. But if it's the flip side, if it's like pure debate bro mode with no civility at all, then like, okay, then he likes that too, because now you get fired up and go crazy. But it's really disarming, because how do you really fight back if it's
And you can always, the thing with Pisco is if you imply he doesn't know what he's talking about, or that like he gets really, really mad when I kind of big bro him. So like, I think in this debate, that's kind of like, are we doing the Euthyphro's dilemma? Like, are we doing philosophy 101 stuff? Like, why are we doing this? It doesn't really, and he gets really mad about that. Like at one point in my last debate with him, he was arguing something about whether the immunity decision means that has implications on what Congress can impeach for. And I was like, no, it doesn't matter, because there's no standard. Congress can impeach for, as long as they say it's high crimes or misdemeanors, it could be eating a ham sandwich. There's no standard. It doesn't matter. And he's like, but don't you think it's unconstitutional? I was like, why the fuck would Congress care what a junior lawyer thinks about? And like, he got so fucking mad. Like, so like there's something about like that, that implication that he's out of his depth, that he's it sets him off, which is funny.
Oh yeah.
This isn't a moral proposition, right? I didn't ask that to just be like a dig. I'm just like, can we just agree something baseline that you're not speaking literally, right? And they won't even give ground on anything. Immediately, by the way, I buy bullets, right? So they're like, would you agree that slavery is compatible with the American moral? I'm like, yeah. As I defined it, yes. Immediately. I immediately say, yeah, bite that bullet. That's what I understand. I understand that it seems bad to us. But just because something is bad doesn't mean it's not consistent with American moral position. Immediately bite the bullet. But getting them to like agree, like it's the Patrick Wallet meme. I'm like, so you agree if Paul holds these truths to be self-evident, that's a statement about Paul's beliefs, correct? Yes. And you agree that that's different than a moral proposition? Yes. So you agree, therefore, that when they say we hold it, literally, I understand there could be something else implied, but literally, it's not a moral proposition. No, I'm not going to grant that. And this is what I was trying to say before, Pisco, about Hume and Kant. And you just perfectly demonstrated it. You just perfectly demonstrated, like,
at least he gives you the enlightened philosopher voice of I don't know what I'm getting. I think I went from Irish to Indian to Southern. I've kind of bounced around.
Yeah, you're like a Southern leprechaun in his mind. And I'm a glasses wearing pompous professor. But like, look, here's the thing. First of all, I don't know how to make this any more clear. When you include yourself in a statement of belief, you are both stating what you believe and that it is true. If you're only describing somebody else, you're not implying it's true. If I say, Scotty believes in the moral proposition, I'm describing Scotty. If I say I believe in the moral proposition, presumably I believe in it because I think it's true, right? I'm not saying like I believe in it, but secretly I know I'm full of shit. Like that's the implication, is when you include yourself in the statement, it's doing both things. And then the Hume-Kant point is really important, because when they say self-evident, they mean axiomatic. And the reason they're doing it is because David Hume's insertion of doubt into everything, which is what he was trying to do, this is all subjective, isn't it true that it's all subjective, is like, it's a philosophic dead end. There's no way that you can ever get anywhere, which is why our founders rejected it. So yeah, he was playing Hume, and maybe it annoyed him that I pointed out that he was playing Hume, and maybe it annoyed him even more that he had no fucking idea what I was talking about. But that's not my problem.
Yeah.
I should get glasses next time I talk to him.
Yeah, bring it on. So yeah, next time, when you debate and you want to make a point, but like that is going to piss him off, pull the glasses up and then put them down so you're looking over them, and then
and you should bring a leprechaun hat.
I will.
Hate that shit too. And it's like, I'm gonna bully Wick a little bit here. I love Wick, mean it, but there's that thing that Wick did in that one Live and Learn panel, which was like, guys, this is the problem. This entire exchange is the problem, where you have to have this kind of meta side commentary about like, you see, this is what we're up against. This is the problem. And it's so fucking performative, and you're trying to dodge the point of the discussion. The problem is, it's hard to get into the meta, or not to get into the meta, when they're accusing you of doing something like that's incompatible with good conversation. Like, I knew you would try to do this. And we all understand. And then he's like justifying his terminology. Like, this is the terminology as found in the Declaration of Independence. Oh, okay. Point to me where in the Declaration of Independence says American moral proposition, and where you can catch out the meaning of that term to justify like you're saying that that's like a better definition. And everyone seems to have this like intuition. I don't have it. That words have this like objective meaning to go discover. And you find out as you ground it out, and as the open conversation showed, that it's all premised. It's all kind of premised on this precept garbage. And I'm like, wait a second, are we doing a religious? And yes, it turns into a religious debate and a precept debate because it's all fucking gibberish.
Well, it's Darth Dawkins.
I mean,
You can't escape it.
This is what I mean. Like, I don't know what better evidence there is than him calling it precept garbage, right? It's precept gibberish, right? Like, I mean that, but there's an interesting thing there, right? Where he said, you know, very postmodernist. Like, he doesn't think words have objective meanings.
Yeah.
And on some sense, he's right. You know, like, we, instead of picking the word liberty, we could have made up a different word with the same meaning, right? But what the postmodernist has to contend with is that we're not, you know, an objective theorist isn't saying words have objective meaning. We're saying they're pointing at something objectively true. Yeah. And the thing they're pointing at is true, even if you change the word.
Right.
Right. And this is not like, I'm again, I know this pisses him off, but I'm just going to double down on it. This is not a complicated philosophic concept. This is, if you understand the basics of like what's a postmodernist and what's a modern philosophic theorist, like somebody who believes in objectivity versus like a full subjectivity postmodernist, this is just core. And what he's saying here is that he is, whether or not he knows it, a postmodernist, which of course he is. That's all. That's why he's a living constitutionalist instead of an originalist. That's why he thinks this is precept garbage. Because if you're a postmodernist, of course none of this shit makes any sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll full disclosure for everyone here. I'm certainly not as well read on the philosophy than our friend Ryan here. So he's the brain behind the operation. I'm just I'm the good looks, you see. But
and the pot of gold.
That's right, and the pot of gold. But even that, like, getting into stuff like that, it's like, yeah, I see what you're saying. If you want to get real granular and say a word itself, yeah, how do we know that this is a fork? Is the word that this is objectively true, that the word fork refers to this, other than the subjective meaning that we give those four letters FORK and apply it to this thing that I'm holding. But just because we could use we could call it a floofle, but so long as everyone understands that the floofle refers to this thing in my hand, then that this is the objective truth, that this is the true thing that we are referring to, and it doesn't matter what word we're using. And yeah, it's like in my philosophy 101 brain, it's like I could get to that immediately, and I would probably I would easily concede. I think Pisco is a lot more read up on philosophy than I am, but the fact that stuff like that I'm like, what are you getting at?
You have to. This is the thing about like why it's called common sense moral realism, because it's common. What you just said, like the fork is a fork no matter what word I call it. That's fucking common sense. Everybody knows the fork is there regardless of what you call it. It's still a fork, right? Yeah. Maybe you call it a linga, I don't know, but it's still a fork. Like the word doesn't matter. You have to be in what Zero Fucks is calling Derrida hell to Jacques Derrida is a prominent philosopher who argued for this, to think that like the world is a social construct and the fork is not really a fork, it's whatever we agree upon, right? Yeah. Which is, and he's saying one of the famous memes of all of the internet is Vosh trying to argue that there's no such thing as water because the Spanish speakers call it agua, but he mispronounced agua and said aqua, which was funny on many levels. But it's just it's this kind of like it's Derrida hell. It's this like radical subjectivism at which point nothing means anything, and all that's left is politics and power.
which is,
Yeah.
of course, all that's left for a postmodernist, politics and power. And that's all they really care about is politics and power.
Yeah, I want to get your answer to this question, but real quick before that, does Vosh come out? Does anyone know? Has Vosh come out of the fortress arc yet, or is he still locked up in there? Because I feel like that would be a great conversation, at least between you and Vosh. I would love to see that.
Oh my God. I have to take a Xanax before that conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd obviously talk to him. That would be funny as fuck. But to my knowledge, he is certainly not talking to somebody like me.
He's holed up in that fortress. But all right, yeah, I'm curious how you respond to this. How does one practice law if you don't think words have objective meaning? Does seem quite contradictory. So, what is your enlightened ivory tower law professor answer?
Well, I mean, I guess what he's doing is he's saying, with a contract, I got to figure out what the parties intended, but I mean, but I think that look, there's a whole school of thought, like the living constitutionalists, like Justice Jackson, though she calls herself an originalist, she is not. That's why she can call herself an originalist, because she doesn't think the word originalism has any fixed meaning. So she can apply it to her jurisprudence, though she clearly is not an originalist. So yeah, I think it is a problem, though. I think that if you don't believe that there's at least an objective thing that words are pointing to, at least some of the time, like I'm sure there's some words that don't have an objective meaning. But if there's some word, if at least some do, and if you can't wrap your head around that, then you never think there's actually a right answer. You just think there's an agreed upon answer. And that changes your view of everything, right? Like it changes your view of absolutely everything. Like, what should the Supreme Court do? Well, it should do whatever's politically good for us, because there's no right answer. So why not do the thing that helps us?
Yeah. All right.
Did you understand that guy's like, and there was one guy there who clearly understood what was going on. He's like, it's just trivially true. Whenever they kept saying like, wait, you're saying that subjectively, a group of people who subjectively thought that it was good to do horrible things would subjectively think that? I'm like, well, yeah. If it's circular, like you're saying, if it were the case that they subjectively believe that, would it be correct subjectively to think that? I'm like, yeah, that just obviously, like,
I don't even know
these
what he's
guys have
referring to.
worms in their fucking brains, dude.
Yeah, it must be someone on the panel, but I can't think of that either. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of tuned out when the panel started because they wanted to go super duper even further deep in the like, is objective morality real weeds? And I was like,
she does a lot of like the Andrew Wilson stuff and a lot of the like orthodoxy bro stuff, or at least she did. I don't know if she still does, but so I think they have a lot of religious debates on her channel. So she's got like a bunch of people who are like locked and loaded on religious topics.
I see.
Yeah.
All been like, I don't know how they've been converted by like the least convincing dialogue tree in the history of the world. Darth Dawkins, Andrew Wilson type people, that they think like the rules of logic, that the number 3 is a proposition. I don't even know what the fuck that means. Did you hear Ryan say that? The number 3 is something that could be true or false. I don't even know what that means. Does any of you know what that means? The number 3 is true? Fucking tell me what that means. And all the little side commentaries.
Yeah, what does that mean, Ryan?
Whoa. He doesn't. Okay, this again, more proof. By the way, Zero Fox, I'm trying to extend maximum charitability because you asked like which one's the real Pisco. He seems pretty fork-tongued in this moment, but he's venting post-debate. So I'm trying not to read too much into that, though he's certainly spitting some venom. I didn't say if you believe there's 2 ways to view math. Is math invented or discovered? If math is invented, then it's all stuff that people came up with, and it's not really true. It's just a useful heuristic, to use Nonfon's language, that people use to get through life. Now, on the other hand, if math is discovered, that means there are true things about the universe that are always true. And we didn't invent them, we just discovered them. So 3, the number 3, is true. It would be like an abstract object. It is a true fact. It is a true trait of our universe that the number 3 exists. That anytime you put 1, 2, 3 together, you now have 3 objects. It just like with pi. It's true of every circle. If you draw a circle, pi will always be there for you to discover. And if you draw 10,000 circles, it'll be true every single time because it's a true fact about our universe, not a mere construct of human minds. But this is a debate.
Like there are philosophers who think math is discovered. There are philosophers who think that math is invented. But if you think it's invented, you're pretty much a radical subjectivist, as Pisco clearly is.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
They get
Very-
fucking cooked. They get fucking cooked. It's like they're like, oh, we'll have to schedule another debate where we can fucking fuck you. You get crushed. You get and you can tell by how fucking uncomfortable they look. Immediately crushed on all these substantive points. Your shit makes no sense. You're saying that like being in favor of slavery is, I guess, being in favor of slavery, more in keeping with American principle than being in favor of DI. Like, you just sound like fucking clowns. Both of you sound like clowns. Gen Z especially. I'm like, Ryan, yes, for sure. But Gen Z especially, like, not even understanding why I'm raising points, dude. Like, come on, man. You think that I'm ascribing that you're in favor of slavery in the context of conversation? Don't ask him about Nazis, because that was, if Sarah let us get down that trail, holy shit. That would have been so productive and juicy. Oh, really? You believe pie is real? I didn't even know if he was referring to an actual pie or like the number pi.
I think that summarizes the exact issue. We said that like 5 times so far. I think that summarizes the exact issue with the entire debate. When we are talking about whether things can be true, objectively true, and you say the number 3 is just a true thing. Pi is a true thing. I don't know. I guess all I can say is context clues. Maybe?
Yeah, I think I said this to him at one point in the debate where I was like, he's like, how do you know that the moral proposition, does that term appear in the document? I was like, no, because context clues exist, Pisco. Like they wrote a moral case for the nation's existence, and then they sent it to England to say, this is why we are morally justified in rebelling. So from that, I have implied that this is a moral proposition. It's not a big leap to get there, right? This is so funny. He's saying, in Pisco's world, if you're talking about whether 3 is metaphysically true, and then someone says, well, like you could also make the same comments about pi, he can't figure out whether you're talking about the number or the food.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, holy shit. Like, could you imagine if you operated that way in real life? Like, you know, I mean, like you come downstairs.
I just, I think it was one of the recent. Yeah, it was the tariff case. I was listening to the oral arguments to talk about it for last week's show. But I think it was Gorsuch, who I'm coming to find. I think he might be the best questioner of the 9 on the bench right now. I just love his questions.
Oh yeah, they're good.
I think they just cut straight to the point, or will raise an analogy that's just like spot on. But he made the point about, because they're talking about tariffs, and there's like 8 different words in this IEPA statute of like regulate. I forget all the words now. But basically, he makes the point. He makes a comparison to say, in a statute that regulates arms, and it lists out a bunch of different types of arms, like knives, daggers, swords, and pikes, we can conclude that pikes in that statute refers to the spear and not the fish, right? and the lawyer was like, obviously, yes. So that's just exactly what happened here. It's like, well, actually, Your Honor, we have to be. I don't know exactly. How could who's to say?
Well, there's this wonderful meme that goes like, a surprising amount of discourse is just leftists pretending they don't know what words mean, and that's a good one. If I do that tactic again of calling the shot before you swing in the opening, I might add that to the list of things that is going to happen in the debate, because it is fairly predictable. But yeah, it's I mean, if you're going to take the position that you cannot use context clues and no words have fixed meanings, then yeah, we're going to struggle to understand each other, because how the fuck would we?
Yeah.
Like the ratio. Like, what does it mean to say the number pi is real? What are you talking about? And that to me is always like the funniest little mental image I have of God with a beard and the sky being like, okay, there's a morally true fact about what the Supreme Court should rule on about how much of a gay cake is too gay of a cake to be protected by whatever, right? And it's objectively correct at this level of gayness for it to be contrary to natural rights, but I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to write it in all their hearts, and they're going to have to discover it in totally unpredictable and inconsistent ways all the time for the rest of eternity. Okay, great. Thank you for your system. And it's just a way for them to think that they're better than everyone else. I have God on my side. I have objectivity on my side.
See, I almost responded to that in the debate, but we moved far enough past it. I was going to let it go. But the idea that Well, this characterization. First, I think you're correct in saying I think there is a disdain for religion that I think just was
A
laid bare.
deep disdain for religion.
Right. Yeah. And just in that clip right there. But this attempt to apply these general rules, 'cause I think that's how we can describe when we describe moral rules. We're describing about
Mhm.
rules of generality, and now the challenge is how do you apply these rules of general rules down to the particulars, and that's that's where I was hoping or I thought our debate was really going to be on was like basically we agree on the moral rules and now we just are going to disagree on how they apply to the particulars, but we never got to that point. But now it makes sense though if this is his characterization of the gay cake case was that God has to be specifically setting down moral rules on how gay a cake can be before you're allowed to say I don't want to bake it now. It's yeah, when we talk about pedantic, that is what we mean.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a great one of my John Lennox. He's a professor of mathematics. I think I don't forget which university he's at in England, but he's also a Christian apologist. And I'm going to mess up his quote. So to paraphrase him, one of his great lines I think is one of the best I've heard is he said like when faced with something like Pisco just said, like the God that you're describing and saying you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. You know what I mean? It's a straw man. Like he's creating this kind of straw man of what an atheist thinks religious people think, which is that God's up in heaven weighing in necessarily on the gay cake issue in this way and then not telling anybody. Which I mean, there is like divine hiddenness is a real philosophical argument. It's an interesting one, but I don't think we need to give him credence to that because what he's just saying is that he finds the whole thing preposterous. But he finds it preposterous because he's describing a straw man of his invention. And I've never met anybody who's serious about their Christian faith or serious about Christian philosophy or even just theology or theism in general who would describe their religion or their morality the way that he did. Because of course, like that's just not what anyone thinks. But like you said, a deep disdain.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Have everything. You are ungrounded. You're just subject to the wind. Like, dude, if all your objective grounding does is make it subject to your own internal fucking navel gazing and monologuing, rubbing your belly as to what you think your heart says, then in what sense are you in a better position than anyone else who's relying on their own intuition? You're relying on just as much as your fucking chance in hell throwing a fucking dart at the wall to understand the imperceptible and conceitedly impossible word of some lawbringer or giver or God himself or themselves or herself. And let's all cut the crap. What the fuck is going on here? You think Ryan would be talking shit about the left if they all had his view but were ethical subjectivists? So if they all had the same view about DEI, the same view about fucking quotas and shit, and the same shit about race, the same everything, but they're just like ethical subjectivists, do you think Ryan would be like, oh my God, we're in a no, obviously.
Let's ask Ryan.
I think I did it again. Remember earlier in the conversation, I was like, postmodernists and subjectivists, it all ultimately boils down to politics.
Yeah.
And that's what he's saying right here. He's saying that no matter how much I'm talking about philosophy, no matter how much I'm explaining what I believe or why, he doesn't believe it because he believes that my critique is ultimately grounded in the political, not the philosophical. Now, of course, I can't prove that to him, right? Like he can't read my mind. I can't read his. But that is, in terms of projection, that is what postmodernists believe. So I'm unsurprised that he's saying it because I've learned that Pisco is a postmodernist.
Yeah.
What's motivating Ryan and what's motivating Gen Z are their political views. That's what's causing them.
Okay.
Ukala got it. Predicted it.
Yep. Boom.
Yeah.
To be against the left and to do all this fucking talking shit about the left. It's the political views themselves, not at the level of meta ethics. And everyone fucking knows it. Everyone knows that shit. That what's really fucking ticking them off are the policies themselves, not the meta ethical positions of the left, especially given the fact that they can't make an argument. They can't make an argument for why the left hold one ethical view, meta ethical view over another. Just deranged, totally deranged. Crazy, but predictable, frankly, and in line, I think, with the condescension.
Oh boy, predictable, and saying we were the predictable ones, and now it's the condescension. It's I think the word projection does get thrown around a lot, and not always accurately. But I think that's 100% accurate here. That our main critiques of his approach to the debate and now his takeaways from the debate, yeah, he's projecting onto us. And I don't know any other way of looking at it.
Yeah, I thought we won beforehand. Now I'm sure we won because of how he conducted himself afterwards. But yeah, I mean that's what this is. It's pure projection. And there's a very funny thing he's doing there where he's saying like, my disagreement with the left is about politics, as opposed to my political views are informed by my moral views, and the fact that they're doing something I view to be immoral has caused me to disagree with them, right? So but that's what it is. Like if you're a postmodernist, then there is no right, there is no wrong, there's just subjectivity, there's just power, there's just groups, there's just people banding together to try to get their way, and as a result, everything is downstream of politics. So the idea that for somebody else that's not true is unthinkable, right? Like he doesn't think there's anything else for it to be about. So how could it be about that for anyone?
Yeah, versus you could just ask us what our position would be, and it's just not that. We'd very emphatically say it is not that. It is not pure politics. It is because our whole point is we're trying to appeal to this idea of objective morality, and that there is something that exists that is bigger than pure politics, and that should be the guiding light, and ultimately should be the constraining force for when their view of everything's purely legalistic, when they overstep the bounds and start violating people's natural rights, even if they do so legally, that there has to still be some force that constrains that. That is our view. So yeah, our view goes much bigger than pure politics, but yeah, it's no. We are simply political actors.
I mean, but it's just a silly thing. Like I think Soviet Russia was immoral. They threw people in gulags, right? Like I both object to the throwing in gulags and also object to their violation of natural rights. And the gulags are an example of that, right? Like it's not like the idea that these things are totally atomized and separate is it's a take. It's certainly a take. It might be true for him, but it certainly is not how. This is why I say sometimes why I think that sometimes they don't have a theory of mind for the right.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe it's because I was a leftist for so long, but I understand how he thinks. I don't think he understands how I think. And that's kind of the difference.
And that seems to be a common recurring theme across many of our friends we are encountering on the left on our journeys. All right, we got, how much is this?
We're done. We got like a
50
minute.
seconds left. Let's glean our final nuggets of wisdom from our dear friend, and we'll wrap it up from there.
Of Ryan generally, I mean, Ryan likes to think like I'm arrogant. I'm this. Every word is dripping with I'm better than you. I have this is so like you, Pisco, to this or that. Like, give me and then the minute you call him on it, like, whoa, we're gonna tone it down here, folks. Hey, we have to tone it down. Let's go to the questions when you give it back, because they're used to fucking people cradling their ball sack and accepting they're being rude as fuck. Well, I'm happy if you're gonna throw bombs, I'm gonna throw them back.
There we have it. Let me
his chat hates me so much. You see the last chat on there was Ryan kind of racist. That's that's what it's always fun. His chat fucking loathes me. I'm like a comic book villain in his chat.
Let's just because I'm curious, let's go through just a few of these comments, because there's 215 of them, so obviously cannot go through all of them.
Whose channel is this?
Pisco's.
Oh, holy shit, this is going to be rough.
Oh yeah.
All right. So we're diving to the belly of the beast here.
Well, actually, let me make sure there's nothing that will get us struck.
Yeah.
I think we're okay. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, can YouTube really get mad about like
it's their own
comments, right?
Yeah. Okay, top comment: cringe creationist debate disguised by law.
Nice. Creationism. I think that came up a few times, right?
Yeah. So many times. We can never again be fooled into thinking these people are driven by any kind of morals.
Okay.
Cool. Ryan's opening statement, where he predicts Pisco's argument, is all you need to watch to see how bad faith he is. He thinks by simply saying, this is what they're going to argue, it instantly discredits those arguments. He's Andrew Wilson levels of smug and bad faith, just more polished and gets away with it more.
Holy fuck! Oh, that's such a good one. I thought I had the best one where the people compared me to Andrew Wilson. This is way better. I'm gonna go on there and snip that. I fucking love that. I'll take it. Like, you know, like if their point is that I am a more polished debater than Andrew Wilson, sure, I'll lean into that.
Yeah, no, that's a compliment. That's a hey, congratulations. Heck yeah.
I take that as a that means that what I did was very effective. Like if it made like a Pisco fan that irritated, then that was an effective technique that I should use.
Bro,
No, Zero Fox. I saw. Apparently, there's 2 or 3 of these because I found one that I put up on X, but I think this one's even better.
oh boy, we got to get a collection going, a whole
Yeah.
library. Let's see. Don't bring up Trump or the Republican Party because it debunks our argument. I don't think. Yeah, I don't
It's
think.
irrelevant to the argument.
Yeah, and neither of us said it would debunk our argument. We just said it's not relevant to the
Yeah,
proposition.
like and just to make this clear, just so I said this in debate. If we said at the beginning, for the sake of argument, though we don't believe it to be true, we concede that the right has abandoned America's moral proposition.
Yeah.
That would have no bearing on whether the left has also abandoned America's proposition, right? It just doesn't matter. It's like it might be tangentially relevant in some corner cases, but it's not actually a pertinent issue. And you know what? If we hadn't done that at the beginning, Pisco would have talked about Trump the whole fucking time.
Yeah. And he really tried to. He tried for those first 10 minutes, and we reeled it in real quick. But
hey, Mike.
Yeah.
I don't know, Gen Z, how late you want to stay up. I know we normally stop at 10, and it's 45 after.
Yeah. I'm down for maybe another 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's right. I got like 20 minutes in me, like not a hard stop at 11, but maybe a few minutes after 11 is when I'd want to stop. So
Yeah.
if we want to have a short conversation, Mike, that'd be fine. But I'm not. I don't want to go beyond that.
Let me go ahead and send.
I've been staying up way too late.
I could have swore I had Mike on Discord. Maybe not. Hold up. No, I don't think I see Mike. Hold up.
You could just put the link in chat.
Okay.
Does it have? I think my chat and your chat are both there.
Yes. Okay. Let me do that. Boom. Anyone not named Mike will get permanently banned. Just kidding. Or am I? Don't push your luck.
Yeah. Ryan's moral law is just whatever he thinks is fair, and no one is allowed to discover anything different from what he thinks.
Yeah. All politics.
We
both got mentioned. Okay. If Ryan and Gen Z attorney insist that broad leftism is more un-American than ignoring the Constitution and ruling by decree, you may as well abolish all left-leaning parties and install Trump as forever king. Moral integrity means nothing to MAGA. It seems like completely not anything we talked about, but
yeah, that's the thing that Pisco wanted to talk about, but which is
And you still getting lumped in with the Trump sycophant. You love Trump. He's your guy all the way, forever king Trump.
It's really funny how many times I've had to have this conversation where people people get like really up in my case for like, you voted for him 3 times, and I was like, that.
Yeah. I think this is probably our most revealing comment. Then we'll bring Mike in. Because since Pisco liked it. Mind-numbing is right if they're only interested in debating, quote, the modern left doesn't espouse a particular brand of 300-year-old moral realism, then fine. Who gives a fuck? This conversation should have been 2 minutes long. That's pretty bad mask off, I think.
I mean, I think that's exactly our point. Like that, I think that I don't think this is an uncommon view on the left. I think this is the majority view on the left, and that's why they've abandoned the American moral proposition.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mike.
All right.
What's up, buddy?
Hey guys.
Beautiful. Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for taking the time to chat. I I did, I hopped on the panel at the end there because I did want to talk to you guys, but the panel format's just too chaotic. So
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes she
yeah.
if something gets heated, she'll make it like a 1-on-1 or a 2-on-2, but she kept it at 10 the whole time, which is
Mhm.
like at a certain point, you're just letting it's like there's like our supporters and our detractors, and we're just letting them argue with each other, and we're just sitting there. And I was like, it's
Mhm.
1:30. We got to go to sleep, man. This is it's getting late.
Yeah. But anyway, like I think I've said this before to you, Ryan, but maybe or maybe not to Gen Z. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think, if it were up to me, I'd rather you guys be the right opposition, but candidly, you're not, right? The right opposition is Cat Turd and, Matt Walsh, which is what I understand to be a different brand than you guys. But I did want to ask a couple questions just to clarify. So, and because I don't want to misrepresent you, Ryan, do you identify as Christian, or do you call yourself Christian? No.
I'm culturally Christian. I'm a deist, which means I believe in God, but I'm agnostic as to any claim of revelation or miracle. So
Okay.
it's not that I think Christianity is wrong. It's just that I don't think it's possible for me to know.
Okay.
So in that sense, my beliefs are like part of the reason this topic is near and dear to my heart is my religious beliefs are very, very similar to like Thomas Jefferson's or Thomas Paine's or the other deists at the founding.
Okay. Because building off of that, then, and just tell me if I'm misunderstanding you or misrepresenting your argument. But it sounds to me like at the end of the day in that debate, what you were trying to say is that the Declaration of Independence is essentially a divinely inspired document, that the objective moral truths in the Declaration of Independence were actually revealed divinely to the founding fathers, right?
No.
The whole written on their hearts. That's not what you're saying.
No.
So
Like
then
what I'm saying is, and this is a discussion we had earlier in this wrap up. So let's go away from morals for a second. Let's just talk about math. There are some philosophers who think math is discovered, and there's some who think it's invented, right? So if you think it's invented, you mean it's a construct of human minds. It could be different. People make it up. It's just a useful human heuristic. Philosophers who think it's discovered are saying that the laws of math are a true descriptor of our universe. It's just true that the number 3, that 3 objects is 3. It's just true that pi is a trait of a circle that you could derive. And if you drew 1,000 circles, you're always going to find pi. It's discoverable, not invented. So when I say that, like, when we're talking about natural law, I'm saying that there are true moral facts about humans and our existence in this universe that we can discover through our senses and through reason, and that those exist in my estimation because of our relationship with our creator. But in theory, there's other ways you could get there. Like if you were an ancient Greek, you would have said there are Platonic forms of the different moral principles, which are what natural law is, and that you can discover them through reason, right? So like an ancient Greek philosopher might believe in natural law, but not talk about their creator. They would instead talk about Platonic forms, and it's still roughly the same thing. That's the point I'm getting at, is that there's the creator part is why the founders believed it to be true. But what we're really describing is an objective set of discoverable moral principles that can be discovered through our reason, our intuition, our senses as we move through the world.
So then, am I right in saying that the Declaration of Independence is not the last word on the objective truth, and also that the Declaration of Independence could be wrong, right? The same way math could be wrong and
Sure.
has been throughout history.
Yeah, it could be wrong.
It could omit certain things or include certain things that are not, essentially be wrong in some ways, right?
Yes, though keep in mind that we find these truths to be self-evident. So we're saying that these are axiomatically true, meaning like the moral statements that follow do not require proof, do not require further inquiry. We as a nation are assuming these to be true, right? That's what we're doing. So and we didn't get into this debate, but even if you think they are wrong, that would only show that you're abandoning them, right? Because like if we were founded on these moral propositions and you're saying actually the propositions are wrong, that would evidence your abandonment.
Well, what if you say that the propositions are incomplete and that the left's moral founding is not contrary to what's already written there, but based on some other moral foundation that is just not written in the Declaration of Independence, but it doesn't contradict it either.
Well, that would be fine if that were true. But my problem is, and I said this to you in our discussion on affirmative action, and I said it in the debate, and I'll keep saying it because it's just my position. If you want to make society better or right wrongs or do something to help people, that's not a problem. It's a problem only if you violate the moral rules we've already established. So if you can make society better without failing to treat people as individuals, that's fine, right? I don't have a problem with policies that do that, but if you are, and that's why we said the new version of affirmative action doesn't bother me, because you treat the applicants like individuals. What does bother me is when you fail to treat people as individuals, and that's what the examples that I gave in the DEI context were. It's all about those examples rather than the new affirmative action, which I actually think that could be a new principle that people are discovering, that as you can build on our moral foundation and do things to make the world a better place. I just don't think that's what the left was doing.
And real quick, just to jump in, I think this is the point Pisco was trying to make, that he thought was kind of undercutting us, but we were completely in agreement that these new things that have been added on and included within the moral foundation over time, like ending slavery, like women's right to vote, like ending segregation, these types of things, like there's nothing against adding on and further rounding out the moral proposition, so long as what you're adding to it is consistent with the original moral proposition. And our main criticism is that these new things that are coming in from the left are inconsistent with that moral proposition, because they're rejecting these core beliefs in ways that giving women the right to vote was not rejecting those core beliefs.
Okay, got it. So, and this might go long, so we don't have to go through the whole thing, but I did on the debate, and I guess now want to talk about what you're saying, Ryan, and you, Gen Z, which is that failing to treat people as individuals is against the moral proposition. And I guess I'll just try and lay out my point, which is that when the government does policy, the administrative impossibility of treating people as individuals doesn't necessarily mean, and then going forward with that policy anyway, doesn't mean that you're abandoning the Declaration of Independence. For example, disaster relief. When the government is trying to triage, right, resources, evacuation protocols, whatever, they draw zones, right? This is risk 1, risk 2 for flooding, for fire, for earthquake, whatever. What they don't do an individualized analysis and say, well, this guy's house is fireproof, and this guy's house is more fire risky, and this guy actually has a doomsday bunker, so he doesn't need any, the government doesn't do that because it can't, not because it doesn't want to. It's just expedient and practical to just draw circles on a map and say, these people get fire resources first or whatever, and these people get evacuated first, and these people get noticed first. And that process of doing that, even though it doesn't treat people as individuals, is not against the moral proposition of America, right?
It doesn't even sound like it theoretically would be. Like, for example, like if you drew zones and those zones are about the risk that people experience in those places, you are treating them as individuals. Now, you might, in marginal cases, be wrong, but that's the attempt, is to treat them as individuals, right? For example, if somebody did disaster relief, but they only gave the relief to Republicans and not Democrats, they looked at the voter rolls and they're like, zone 1 is Republicans, Democrats, fuck yourself. That would violate the American moral proposition. Like, I think that would be incredibly fucked up to isolate only your supporters and give them disaster relief, because you wouldn't be treating people fairly as individuals at all, right? So I don't actually see how the example cuts the other way.
Well, what if, to make the hypothetical clearer then, let's say there's a disease that disproportionately is harmful to women. So women are more likely to have more severe symptoms, more likely to die. But it's like, men, let's say men have a 5% fatality rate and women have a 6% fatality rate. So men are dying to this too. Then
did you say 5 and 6, or did you say 5 and 60? It makes
5 and 6. 5 and 6.
Okay,
so it's close, but it's more for women. And the government does some kind of proportional thing. So we're going to give women a proportional better access to the treatment or the cure or whatever, then is that, and that's so broad, right? That's half the country. To say that women are going to get first dibs on vaccines or first dibs or whatever, proportional to this difference. It's against the moral proposition.
It's a tough corner case, but like, to give you a more clear example, like in the COVID context, one of the things that I took onus with is that New York, for example, was prioritizing people by race for COVID medication when it was being rationed, right? Now, there was no actual evidence that there was a racial issue that impacted COVID rates or impacted COVID fatality rates. It's not like sickle cell or like certain illnesses that actually do have like a documented racial link. They were using race as a proxy for a variety of other things, such as socioeconomic status, access to doctors, et cetera, et cetera. That I thought was inappropriate. Now, if you're talking about like a 5 and 6% difference, and then they said women across the country get medicine, men don't get medicine over that difference, yeah, that strikes me as pretty fucking inappropriate. On the flip side, if it was like a 90% and 5%, then I think differentiating on the basis of an actual difference between the sexes is not a problem, because you're actually looking at an actual difference, not a hypothetical preference or some kind of like subjective desire to treat one group different than another.
But then it sounds to me like your disagreement or your quibbling with these democratic policies is the sort of degree and appropriateness and applicability and efficacy, effectiveness, and really just, is it a good idea or is it designed in a way to achieve the goal that you want?
But it's so much simpler than that. There was the restaurant relief program for the first 21 days said that in order to qualify for money, so the first $5 billion were passed out only to people who were a LGBTQ minority or women. So basically they were saying like the first $5 billion does not go to straight white men specifically. That's not like a subtle issue of treating people like individuals. And it's not like there weren't, I'm sure straight white men whose restaurants were hurting in COVID time. They were saying specifically, we're going to give this money on the basis of immutable characteristics to specific people and not others. That, like, I don't think it has to get very complicated for you to realize, like, that's pretty fucked up. That's a pretty, like, if that was not straight white men, if that was any other demographic, the left would have been losing their fucking mind over it because of how fucked up it was. And that's why these things, a lot of the Biden COVID policies that had this kind of racial quota got struck down by courts because they were obviously problematic because of the way that they were giving preferences in unfair ways. So, I mean, like, I will agree with you that there could be difficult corner cases, but that's not what I'm objecting to. I'm objecting to like very clear violations.
So I don't know the details of the program you're talking about. I'll accept it as true, and I agree with you that it's wrong, right? I wouldn't defend something like that. The left, from my understanding, in all of these policies, has never been driven by prejudice or driven by, and you would at least agree with me on that, right?
No, I don't agree with you.
You think the left is prejudiced against white men?
If you ask somebody, like if you go to a college and someone says like, we have to fight the patriarchy, who are they talking about?
Well, I can get even simpler than that. There was this whole like big scandal controversy, whatever college it was. There were flyers that appeared that simply said, it's okay to be white. And the fact that became, not even saying it's good to be white, it's just saying it's okay. That became like, yeah, maybe you call it an internet scandal, but yeah, that went viral as an issue because people were interested in debating this topic. Is it okay to be white? The fact that that's even something that is debatable. Once again, not that whether or not it's good to be white, just that it's okay to simply exist as a white person. Like, yeah.
I mean, to be fair,
I think the left is expressly prejudiced. They just think their prejudice is okay because they're righting a historical wrong and they're fighting the patriarchy and they're curing the ills of like. They have reasons why they think their prejudice is justified, but I think it's clearly a prejudice.
I mean, I can't speak for people online, and I don't know the details about. I'm accepting what you're saying is true, Gen Z. That people are upset about that. My suspicion is people are upset about that, not about that statement in a vacuum, but by what are you trying to say? Like, what is your point? Because let's say we all agree that it's okay to be white, it's okay to be black, it's okay to be Asian. Why do you feel the need to say it's okay to be white? Is it because you feel that you are being discriminated against for being white and you need to say that to stop that discrimination from happening? Or is it because you want to justify, which some people who say it's okay to be white do this, right? They want to justify their own prejudices, right? That it's okay to want a white ethnocentric country, which is, again, like the Matt Walsh types, right? Like the MAGA types who do actually want to craft immigration policy on the basis of race and skin color and not on any other economic metric or any other merit.
I mean, Mike, I'm just gonna. I have to say, I feel like you're crafting like a historic narrative that just kind of. Maybe you just didn't see what was happening. But like, are you familiar with the works of Ibram X. Kendi?
No, but yeah.
So he won the MacArthur Genius Grant. Like, this is not a small author. I have 4 or 5 copies of his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, because when my wife and I went to like HR trainings over like 2020 to 2024, one of us got it every year. Like, it was like these books were passed out like candy in every corporation in America. This was the leftist gospel. This was the flavor of the week. This was the scholar of anti-racism. He was the most important voice. He's been kind of discredited since then, but at the time he was the head honcho. And one of his policies that he was advocating for is that he thought the United States government should have an agency charged with examining any time that there's a disparate impact on any metric between the races and intervening in the economy to fix it. So if there's a wealth gap between the races of more than 5%, they can intervene and fix it. If there's an income gap, if there's a wage gap, if there's an education gap, they could just come in and fix it. And he famously said, the only remedy to past discrimination is future discrimination. And I'm not making this shit up. Like, this was the thought leader on the left about what equity meant. This is the guy everybody was citing to and quoting to. So like, when I say that these things are expressly contrary to the idea of treating people as individuals, I'm not like making it up. This is exactly what they meant.
But even you would agree that, let's say, in a short amount of time, right? Like, the remedy for past discrimination is future discrimination, where, post-slavery, we say we're going to give Black people land, right? Like, post-Jim Crow, we're going to give Black people some extra stuff because we've been denying them stuff for so long that, I don't know, maybe whether you agree or not, but let's say within a 5-year period, right? It's a temporary 5-year program. We just ended Jim Crow, and we've been relegating Black people to these really shitty schools for so long that we're actually going to take all the Black people and we're going to give them better we're going to give them extra educational resources. That is discriminatory, but would you agree that that kind of discrimination is necessary for remedying the past discrimination?
I think if you're treating people differently on the basis of an actual injury that person suffered, you are treating them as an individual.
But can the injury be generational?
No. And even if it could, you have to understand how ridiculous that becomes and how quickly. Like, in the affirmative action context, which we debated, the last time Harvard released stats about their racial makeup of I can't remember the year, but they stopped doing it because it made them look so stupid. When they were giving affirmative action to Black applicants, the applicants they were giving affirmative action to were not the descendants of slaves. Because if you look at the demographics, the highest achieving statistically group of Black student applicants in America tend to be the children of immigrants. So these are people who immigrated from Nigeria or Ghana or other countries and had amazing educational resumes, applied to Harvard and got a boost up because they were Black, but they weren't generationally injured. Even if we accepted generational injury, they weren't generationally injured because they got the bump for being Black, not for any injury that was suffered by them, even generationally. And that's assuming that generational injury is a valid basis, which I don't think it is, because one of the things that, like, one of the great innovations of Christianity was to not do that. Like, we don't have blood guilt. We don't treat people as having the sins of the father. Like, this is a major thing that we fixed in society, and I don't quite want to roll that backwards.
I mean, I wouldn't characterize it as blood guilt, because the focus is on improving the situation of the people who were let's assume for a second there is generational injury. The focus is on improving the situation of the people who've been generationally injured, not
at the
punishing
expense of someone else.
Well, that's just because anytime you're distributing anything that is scarce in any way, it's zero sum, whether it be tax dollars or seats at a university. I mean,
You think those are equivalent? Like we have an unbalanced budget where we can borrow money. There's no zero sum game there. Our budget is always imbalanced. So like the fact that you spend money on one thing does not mean you don't spend money on something else. Whereas when a student applies to college, one gets in and one doesn't. And when they did affirmative action to let in one black student who was not actually generationally harmed by slavery, they were kicking out a white or an Asian student. Because that's who didn't make the cut.
So printing money is not magic. It's accruing debt. So it is zero sum in the sense that when you print money, you're accruing debt, and the debt has to be paid by future generations. So you're kicking the can down the road.
If I granted you that there's some tangential way in which that's zero sum, you would agree that those two things are so different in scale as to be like, if I give 1,000 tax dollars to a school versus a specific kid didn't get into Harvard because they were Asian. Like you think those are like in any way morally equivalent or seem the same to you?
If we're talking about dollars, and
to be honest with you, Mike,
if you're talking about dollars and benefits, I mean, if you were to ask me, how much worse off are you if you don't get into Harvard but you have to go to Brown instead, which is the case for a lot of Asian students, I suppose. That the marginal difference between Harvard and Brown versus what thousands of dollars in benefits, government benefits, might mean to people. Like I don't think these are magically.
They lost their spot because they're Asian.
And what if someone didn't get benefits because of?
But imagine this. Really imagine this. The application, the people at Harvard, they were racially balancing their classes. They've admitted this. They said that they wanted to make sure that the minority rates didn't drop under certain levels. So imagine if they're sitting around and they're saying like, holy shit, there's too many Asians in our applicant pool. We got to do something about that. Does that doesn't strike you as an immoral thing to say? I don't know if they said that, but let's assume they did. Would that strike you as immoral?
Yeah, assuming someone did say we have too many Asians, then yes, that's immoral.
Okay, but so let's say they didn't say it, but instead they just did it. They were like, look, we all know that we want to keep the Asian percentage under 35. It's at 40. We all know we want to keep the black percentage between 10 and 12. It's at 8. It's time to cut off some people. And that's what they did. They cut off a bunch of Asian students and they bumped a bunch of black students. Like that doesn't strike you as immoral?
If the reason for doing that is purely because they have some kind of prejudice against Asians, they're like Asians are too boring or whatever, and we want black people for whatever prejudicial reason, then yes, that's immoral.
I mean, this might just be a fundamental difference, Mike. I just don't think that you can. I don't see a world where you can say this Asian student is going to get kicked out because he's Asian, and this black student gets in because he's black, and that's a moral thing to do. That seems like a fucked up thing to do to me.
Well, I'm trying to distinguish the morality of crafting these policies based on prejudice against races, right? We don't want black people here because they're dumb, or we don't want black people in our neighborhood because they're violent and loud and noisy, versus crafting for some other, I don't know we can try and come up with them. But if there is a non-prejudicial reason for having race quotas, I think that is morally distinguishable from a policy that is based in prejudice. Do you disagree with that?
I'm not trying to be an asshole here, Mike, but that's the rationale for Jim Crow. That was the rationale for slavery.
Jim Crow was based in prejudice.
No. If you listen to the people who advocated for Jim Crow and slavery, they would say things like, well, we really need to help these people out. We need to teach them how to be civilized. We need to create structure around them. Nobody was twirling their mustache and saying
you don't think the people who supported Jim Crow thought that black people were inferior?
I think that
black people are more violent, that black people are dumber.
That somebody gives for their discriminatory actions is pretty much irrelevant to me. Because everybody thinks they're the hero of their story. And if you look at the writings of the anti-abolitionists, that their argument was that they were helping black people. That was their argument.
I'm talking about prejudice. They thought that black people were dumber, right? I mean, do you disagree that they thought black people were dumber than white people?
No, I don't disagree with that. But how does that?
So that's the prejudice because that is prejudicial, right? The the racial prejudice is what makes it.
But Mike,
I don't
what-
see how you can say that that's
what
not
the
a
Democrats
bad
are doing
thing.
today.
But
No, that's what the Democrats are doing
It's
today.
that-
so what is the prejudicial belief then?
Why do black students need to be able to get into school in much lower test scores and much lower grades?
Because the Democratic, or at least some of the Democratic justification for that is because poverty and educational attainment is a cyclical problem. So in order to break that cycle, but it's not because black people are dumber or Asians are dumber.
Slave owners said. They said
No, the slave owners said black people are dumber. We can't do.
Some of them, they came from Africa.
No,
they don't know how to be civilized. They haven't learned our way.
You can't actually be trying to argue that the slave owners did not think black people were genetically inferior.
I think
they literally had the skull.
I think some of them did, but they also made the same argument you're making. They also made the argument that they just don't know how to act. They just can't do it. They don't know how. We could teach them. That's
That's not what the Democrats are saying. The Democrats aren't saying that black people don't know how to get into college, right? The black people are saying that the problem of lacking educational attainment is a cyclical problem. So if your parents don't get the education, they don't like
Mike.
When you say poverty is cyclical,
an immigrant from Ghana whose parents are both doctors, who came to this country, who is wealthy, who is upper class, would get the same bump, right? And in fact, would be more likely to get the bump than a kid from the hood.
Yeah, but you're moving on to a different point. Hold on, let's finish talking about this slave owner thing.
No,
you're trying to say that the slave owners were not.
This is exactly my point, Mike. The rationale that you're giving. Oh, okay, there's these people and they're hurt by this generational injury. And then we're going to broadly apply that to all people of the same race, whether or not it's true. And in fact, we'll give the bump to people who it's not true about because we're not treating them as individuals. Similarly, they'll say
let's finish the prejudice point before we get to the
can get marked down because we're not treating them as individuals.
I want to finish the slavery comparison that you're trying to make, right? Like that you're actually trying to say that the slave owners did not think black people were inferior, that was not their justification for slavery.
I said that many people of them said that, but they also said the same thing you said. They also said that there was a cultural issue.
Sure, but then just because
how to be civilized.
Yeah, but then just because terrible people have used arguments to justify, their actual reason for slavery. Let's be honest here. Guys, let's be honest. The slave owners, the actual reason they owned slaves is because they thought black people were subhuman. Right,
like that. Let's assume there was a slave owner.
It was not altruistic.
Let's assume
slavery was not altruistic.
Slave owner who, in his heart of heart, believed it was altruistic. Does that make it better?
I mean, no, but I don't believe that.
What the fuck are you talking about? My point is the intention doesn't really matter that much. It matters whether you are violating a moral rule. Like if a slave owner, it doesn't matter whether or not they actually think they're altruistic. Like they could really believe it. They're still violating a moral rule, right? Like my criticism of the left isn't that they are twisting their mustaches like villains. It's that they're doing something wrong, right? And so I just don't give, the point I'm making, Mike, with the slavery point is that I don't give them the same credence because you're basically saying I'm ascribing them best intentions and I think it's fine because I think they're doing something that in their mind is noble. But I don't care. I'm not trying to excuse their behavior. I'm trying to say what they're doing is wrong.
I mean, but you're comparing what Democrats are doing with DEI to what people did to slaves, which is it's mind-boggling to me that you think that those are even within the same universe of comparison. Candidly, I'm a little speechless because when you make someone a slave, you make it legal to kill and rape them.
Yeah. Yes. Like murder is worse than manslaughter. Sure. There's a difference.
This is a murder and manslaughter.
There's a difference in degree.
This is a high five and
no, it's not.
Someone.
It is not a high five. Mike, you either commit to treating people as individuals or you don't. My point is that the left is not committed to that principle, and in fact is actively attempting to walk that principle back, and in fact is trying to make it legal to be able to do so.
Do you think the problem with slavery is that we weren't treating, or I shouldn't say we, but the slave owners were not treating people as individuals. Like that's the problem with slavery.
Clearly, that's the problem with slavery.
That's the only problem with slavery.
Well, Mike, Mike, we have prisoners today who do slave labor in this country. Why? Because they are convicted of a crime and they deserve the punishment that they've received, right? Like we have no problem putting people in chains and forcing them to work if they are treated as an individual and merit that punishment.
I mean, you can't. So slavery, first of all, was way worse than prison slavery now because it's still not legal to just kill and rape prisoners, right? So you can't even compare those.
Well, we used to just execute the prisoners. It was that, which is obviously like we used to just kill people for small offenses. Like you can take away someone's life and liberty in this country or any country if you have on an individualized basis determined that they warrant that extreme punishment. What you can't do is take it life and liberty away from a group of people on the basis of their group. That's incredibly fucked up.
Do you think slavery is possible as a practice without prejudice, without the belief that black people are subhuman?
Yes, of course.
You think that slavery can be maintained as a practice without that, without the prejudicial belief that a certain race is?
Well, okay.
I mean, like, as a matter of theory, yeah, of course. As a matter of practice, I don't know, but as theoretically, of course. Like, what if one tribe?
It just seems to me like you're heavily downplaying slavery and heavily playing and comparing them.
One tribe conquers another tribe and takes them slaves. I don't know that requires prejudice. It just requires that they won the war. Like that happened constantly.
Okay, fair. So then, is the argument you're trying to make that American slavery is not built on prejudice?
Yeah, no. I'm trying to sit back because I'm not saying Mike cannot take us 1v2, but I don't want to make it a dog pile and whatnot.
I appreciate that.
I think to the point though of can slavery be done without prejudice? If we think back and try and put ourselves in the minds, Mike, I hear everything you're saying. I think you're approaching it logically. I think Ryan's taking the more kind of like almost like what Pisco was doing is like, yes, something is possible. It doesn't mean I like it, but it's still, if we think about, okay, take it to the extreme, it is possible. And I think about it like this. Think about people who own pets. Can you own a pet without having a subjective prejudice that's driving you to own that pet, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Can someone own a pet without having a prejudice that is driving them to, I must own and control and dominate this dog or cat or something?
Yes, but they do have to believe that the pet is not entitled to human rights.
And so I think this is the point, though, is that the slave owners had that same mentality, that same logic that these are not humans, or at least not entitled to the individualistic human rights, and therefore I literally, this is the whole definition, right? That they're treating them as chattel property, and it's possible to own someone as a chattel slave and not be doing so out of prejudice. Was it likely or was it common? Probably not. I think the point we're making here is just that it is possible to do so out of an altruistic drive, the same way someone would own a cat or a dog. I know this probably sounds terrible. I hope everyone can appreciate the nuance of the points we're trying to make. Obviously, we're not defending or justifying slavery. We're just trying to address the issue on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's possible to enslave human beings without holding a prejudicial view about the slave. I just don't agree that American slavery was not founded on prejudice, and therefore that the comparison between slavery as a practice and DEI as a practice is preposterous to me.
Because Mike, you're focusing on the prejudice, but that's your focus.
Okay, but why do you not focus on? Why is the prejudice not relevant to you?
Because what's relevant to me is the violation of natural law, meaning treat people as individuals.
So let's say someone does something, violates natural law for prejudicial reasons, and then someone who violates natural law for non-prejudicial reasons. You would view those as being equally bad.
I don't know. You have to give maybe, but my point is I can be very upset about the fact that the Biden administration was attempting to put racial quotas into law without knowing whether Biden or his staff was doing that.
Let me give you an example.
Like I can give you an example. I can't know what they think. I can know what they were doing. And
let me give you an example. Let's say there's a business owner, right? And there's one business owner who's like, Black people are so violent, they're so noisy, whatever. I don't want them in my business. So then they put up a sign that says no blacks allowed. Okay. There's another business owner who's like, man, there are no black customers, even though there are black people in this neighborhood. I wonder what it is about my business that makes black people not want to come in here, and I want to make them feel welcome. So I put up a sign that says like blacks welcome. Okay. And it only says blacks. It just blacks welcome. Are these people equally bad in your mind? Are they equally immoral?
Because one violated the rule and one didn't.
But one is specifically marketing his business towards black people. He's like, I want black people to come.
Yeah,
and
but
he
didn't say
exclusion.
black people only. He said blacks welcome.
Yeah, but he
didn't
is
exclude
trying.
anybody.
But he is diverting his efforts towards getting black people to come and not white people or Asian people. Like he's spending time and effort to get more black people to come.
There's
but
nothing.
he's not doing the same thing to the exclusion of that.
There's nothing zero sum in what he did. He put up a sign that said blacks welcome. Anybody can come in. Like I don't even. It's not even in the same universe.
I mean, okay, let's try and make a zero sum. Let's say he offers a discount to black people.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
So, but you would say those two things are equally bad, even though the guy who offers a discount.
I think excluding a race is worse than a discount. But I think I thought like the.
Or let's make it equal. Let's say
a real world example. There was a cafe that upcharged men. Like it was like women would have like one price, men would have another price at the cafe. I thought that was pretty fucked up.
Okay, so like when bars or whatever, they're like, we want an equal balance of gender, and it's not because we think like it's weird to me.
Mike, I just want to. I'm probably going to call this in like 5. I don't want to like cut you off, but it's 11:30. I thought we were going to be done at 10, so I just want to make sure we're wrapping things.
I guess I'll just finish this. It's. I think it's. Well, I wouldn't say it's weird to me, but I don't think you disagree with me that you aren't particularly factoring in prejudice into your calculus of whether certain things are right or wrong. And I'm not accusing you of doing this, but I suspect that a lot of people on the right do that because they are prejudiced and they don't want to be held accountable for that, right? That there are people who genuinely believe that black people are more violent, that black people are noisy, that black people are dumber, and they want to, but they don't want to admit that prejudice, right? So the left is constantly trying to fight prejudice in ways that, sure, we can say the examples that you gave are wrong, right? That are, we only give money to non-whites or something. I agree with you that that's wrong. But I just think there's a moral difference between people who do those types of policies out of prejudice against a certain race, right? Because they think people of that race are worse or less deserving, versus people who are ostensibly fighting that same prejudice, right? So I think that even if these two people are doing the same thing, I think there's a moral difference between what they're doing.
And even if my point merely, I guess, to make it as simple as possible, even if I granted you that just gets you from murder to manslaughter. It doesn't get you to self-defense, like you did the right thing, right? Like even if I granted you that, which I'm not sure I would, but even if I did, you're still doing something morally reprehensible. Maybe you're doing it for a good reason, but I'm not giving you like you're in the all clear. Like good intentions don't get you that far. At a certain point, like your rationale for doing something doesn't matter that much. Similarly, by the way, I'm not somebody who like, when somebody's like, oh, there's a DUI and it killed, there's the drunk driver killed a wife, this mother and her daughter, someone's like, oh, but they had a really hard life and that's why they started drinking. And they weren't a bad person. Like I'm not deeply interested in the rationale for why the person got drunk and killed his wife and daughter. I'm more interested in the fact that they did. Right. Like, I'm sympathetic to the fact that there could be excuses, but the excuses don't, like, even in your worldview, I don't think fully rectify the harm. At most, they would give color to it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we could talk more about this at a different time. I just think maybe on a personal level that we weigh prejudice differently in the calculus of whether certain policies are acceptable or not, or and their relation to prejudice, right? Candidly, I think even the non-racists or I shouldn't say even, right? The non-racists on the right have a very laissez-faire and dismissive view on the harms of prejudice, right? And the relevance of prejudice. So maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know if you guys disagree or care particularly about prejudice, but I think to people on the left, it matters a lot. And so maybe that's why there's a difference in moral weighing when it comes to policies.
But
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, though, is and yeah, that's probably my last point. Is the prejudice, or at least the redress of prejudice that we see historically, whether it is the right to vote, the integration of schools, the ending segregation, ending of slavery, all of these redressals of prejudice were done without prejudicing others. It was more so about we are including everyone into the equation rather than including some and excluding others. The only thing you could say was getting excluded by these additions was, well, gosh darn it, I wanted. What about my right to have my kid go to a segregated school? Well, it's like, okay, I understand you like that and you wanted that, but that's just not consistent with the moral proposition, not consistent with the Constitution. So that is not a real right that you get to claim. And so that exclusion of that right is not something you can be upset about. So it's really the inclusion of more people into the equation, and that's really what took us up to the Civil Rights Act, which was kind of the final officially equal rights under law. And yes, now we point to disparate outcomes and disparity in outcomes that still persist. But I think the argument on the right, and I understand why you might call it dismissive, but the argument on the right on that is just because you can point to a disparate outcome doesn't mean definitionally that there was prejudice or discrimination that caused that disparate outcome. At some point, we have to point to disparate outcomes as just a fact of life, because they just exist in all different. You can slice any population any which way. You can look at the income level between, or the wealth gap between Irish Americans and Italian Americans, and there's going to be a gap there. I have no idea what it is, but it's just there is going to be a gap. And whichever side has benefited, are we to say that it's because that side it's a Irish supremacist society or it's a Italian discriminatory society, whatever it may be. And so it's just a matter of at what point do we have to draw the line and say we've done enough under what the law allows us to do, to where anything more is now going to cut back against people again, is going to prejudice against people again, which is something that we just fought so hard to try and escape. I'm sorry, I know that was a lot. It was a word salad, but yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts on the issue you're raising here.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, Gen Z. I think that is a succinct summary of the difference. I just think that the right, the non-racist right, is like you're saying, drawing the line on where maybe there is prejudice, maybe there isn't, but we're not going to do anything about it that violates either natural law, like what Ryan is saying, or really just the laws on the books or Constitution, whatever that may be. And on the right, or on the left, sorry, that people view prejudice as such a serious societal issue that warrants or justifies a violation of natural law to is or yeah.
Well, I know we got to wrap up, but I'll just leave you with a little thought experiment. Now, you don't even need to answer now if you don't want to. But right now, there is a growing gap between men and women in college attainment, and women are getting degrees at a much higher rate. It's approaching 60-40, right? So there's a growing impact. If a college started announcing that as a result of this impact, they were going to put quotas on women, and they were only going to let in men because they were worried about the prejudice that men were suffering, and let's say they sincerely believe this, like there's no question about their intent, they're true of heart. Would that strike you as okay for that reason?
I'm happy to bite that bullet. I don't know if it would be okay, but it certainly wouldn't offend me. I wouldn't call it that evil, or it's certainly not prejudiced. So and honestly, that is true that men are struggling, right? That men aren't graduating at the rates women are. They're not getting in college and the women are. So I do think it would be consistent for the left, and the left isn't doing that to their discredit, but consistent for the left to acknowledge this and say like, hey, maybe there is something we should do for men, and in a way that is potentially zero sum. So
I appreciate you biting that bullet. I wouldn't hold your breath. I think you'd be waiting a long time, because the reality is, these things always cut one direction.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, to be consistent, I do agree that if we see in society that men are suffering in certain ways, then it makes sense to spend government resources or spend some type of zero-sum resource in a way to help men. But I suppose the Republican approach then should be we don't do that, right? In order
The Republican approach should be that we develop lower education systems that work better for men so that they can compete more efficiently for these spots.
or at a minimum that it can't be zero. It can't harm women, right? What you're saying is
like for example, like single sex education is often flouted as like a solution to that problem. Like, you know, because it makes it easier for young men to like do young men things and not get derailed educationally. That sort of thing where they're coming up, they're trying to come up with ways to make the education system work better for young men rather than ways to say that there's a quota or like we're gonna say girls' GPAs get discounted by 5%.
I'm sorry for I'll do this really, really quick, 30 seconds, and we don't have to debate about this. I think from the left perspective, when they hear something like that, right, the fear is that you have the mustache twirlers who say what you just said, which sounds reasonable, but then what they do is like for the boys' school gets more resources. The boys' school, they get taught math and science, and then the girls' school doesn't get taught math and science. They get taught sewing and cooking, right? And then the justification being, well, this is better for their education, but like really, the mustache twirlers are trying to enforce societal gender norms. And that's the fear from the left, and that's the suspicion from the left when they hear someone say, well, why don't we segregate in this way? Even though your presentation doesn't imply that, right?
Yeah, and this is honestly one of my great frustrations in talking with the left most of the time, is that like, it's like if I talk to Pisco about politics, Pisco whatever, like I get along with Pisco most of the time unless we're debating, but he approaches every interaction from a position of inferred bad faith in all situations political. And it's like, well, if you're going to infer maximum bad faith, it's almost impossible to reach any consensus, right? Like how could you possibly outreach across the aisle if the other side will never believe that you're saying something in good faith? But that I think that's just something we societally have to work on, because that's kind of where we're at right now. And that's bigger than Pisco. That's kind of all of us. But Mike, I know you don't have a channel or anything, but is there something you want to shout out? I don't want to.
No, not really. I just enjoy these conversations. I appreciate having them. Hopefully we have more in the future.
Yeah, always appreciate you, Mike. And I'm glad you teed up the moral dignity versus factual equivalence point during the debate, because that was an interesting one. I was surprised that Pisco and Nonfon didn't bring it up, because it's one that I thought it was on my list of things that I thought they were
stuck on at least Pisco was stuck on the philosophical debate. I just find the philosophical debates to go nowhere, so I never really engage in them. But anyway, yeah.
Accurate description.
Anyway,
all right, see you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for being here. Alrighty. Well, yeah. Well, hey everyone. That was y'all got a special show tonight.
Yeah, look at that.
Just your OGs, your boys, Scotty O and Ryan, talking about our past glories together, redounding on the glory days and whatnot. But no, yeah, I think that was a good breakdown, good debrief on the on our past adventures, and we certainly will have many more to come. So yeah, anything you got coming up this week that you want to let the good people know about?
No, I have not scheduled this week yet. So I'm going to try to find some time to stream, and I'm going to try to set up some conversations, but I have been remiss in my booking. So if I don't schedule something in the middle, I'll do kind of like a chill React type stream, which I might be overdue for. I've been doing a lot of debates and stuff recently. And of course, Ordered Liberty at the end of the week.
That's right. Yeah, we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming as far as having the panel good to go next weekend. At least ideally, we certainly have quite a number of people behind the scenes that are in the pool to come on. It's just a matter of making sure everyone's available. We had a great gaggle for last weekend that sadly fell apart, and some of them were set to come on tonight, but we're not able to as well. So, but it is okay. It is. We are early. We are young in the process. Episode 2. That's all we've got to so far. So, but we're going to keep on keeping on and keep on this journey together and building this project. So I similarly do not have anything coming up this week that I can think of YouTube wise. Other than actually, I will have a video. I haven't even started it yet, actually. But the case that kind of got me the bulk of my followers was this Tory Lanez case. And the final stop of it was his appeal. And I predicted he was going to win his appeal, and he ended up losing his appeal. So a lot of people have been hitting me up to make a video on that. So I
Yeah,
probably
you got to do it.
got to
And-
do it for the people.
And just to say the obvious, if you don't follow both, all three, Ordered Liberty, Gen Z, and me, please do.
Right.
Your support means it means a lot to us. It really, really helps out. And last thing, I have an open invitation from Sarah, the Raging Tomato, to send her more debate prompts that I would like to debate. If you have an idea for a debate, I'm trying to think of what the next thing I want to send her way is. If you have an idea for a debate that you'd like to see, hit me up, Discord or X or YouTube, wherever. Just let me know what you want to see, and I'll think about it, because I want to set up another Sarah debate. I think that was a cool platform.
Oh, please, let's. It's almost certainly not going to happen, but please, Josiah court packing debate. I'm waiting for it. Yeah,
yeah. I think you'll be waiting a long time. But
I think so too. Yeah, but yeah, definitely send those to Ryan. As he said, sub and follow all the channels: YouTube and X, Gen Z Attorney Ryan Mullally, and Ordered Liberty Podcast. I will have the full episode for this uploaded at some point, if not tomorrow, then the next day. But yeah.
Yeah, and I'm super lazy, so I just stream it directly live to my channel. So there you go. But that means I don't edit anything because I'm lazy as fuck.
Indeed. But yeah, so all good though. Well, everyone, say bye-bye. We will see you for next weekend, Sunday, 8:00 Eastern, for the Ordered Liberty episode 3.
Cheers. Night all.
All right, see y'all.